I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. Yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Got a good one in store for you. Joining me is the host of Operation GCD podcast, JJ Vance. JJ, how are you doing?
Tim, great to see you, sir. JJ Vance here, host of Operation GCD and not the vice president. Great to join you again on another conversation of ancient America and the propagandized narratives in which we live under today that cause folks to find these narratives we discuss, some folks, to be kind of fanciful or fictional.
Yes, and we were talking just now before record that this notion of the Templars, some people think that this is mythology, right? I think that people think about this in a similar way as they do King Arthur or some of those tales, right? It's like,
Hey, you're right on, sir. You're right on.
but King Arthur, I think, was a real guy, but people don't see it that way. They think about Merlin, right? Merlin was actually a real wizard character as well, but he's thought of as mythological. I see the same thing happening with the Templars. Anytime you bring that up, it's like people switch into that's fanciful mode, right?
Sure. Well, if I can provide you a couple statements there on King Arthur, and if I can do a couple quick plugs for Operation GCD,
Yes.
folks can check out a lot of these ancient American tales of my thoughts on such the secret society that started America and the mounds in which they venerated, the Society of Cincinnati, and the mounds being the ancient architecture of America, which is all wrapped up, both of those matters, in the Templar and the ancient history of America. So, and I'm doing my Unabomber look tonight, so folks can check out Operation GCD Sundays, do a Patreon preview. A couple of weeks ago, I like to tell my Operation GCD tales, my adventures in being a garbage can dude. And a couple weeks back, I told the tale of my interactions with the Unabomber. Well, sorta. So I was a groomsman in the hometown of the Unabomber, Lincoln, Montana. And back then, over the last 25 years, obviously they provided a notion in my mind that the Unabomber was not that bad of a guy. And I was like, wait a second. And this is back in 1999. So this is right after the events of the Unabomber. So, over time, I've kind of adapted those thoughts, but I try to apply a lot of those kind of thoughts across the spectrum of activities, including history. We are propagandized, whether it's the Unabomber or American history, then, across the spectrum. And I also do a lot of talking about satanic murder and stuff, satanic panic. That's another propagandized nature we live under today here in America, still ongoing and present. And I do that on my Operation GCD Thursdays. I do a Patreon preview there as well. But I really started Operation GCD back in May of 2016 to talk about the Society of Cincinnati, the mounds, the ancient architecture of America, and the Knights Templar.
Bam! That's it.
And that's where we're at tonight.
That's it. That's the segue, because I got a couple of things I want to show you real quick here.
Yeah, and if I can add one quick note, sir, on the King Arthur tale, we do see King Arthur at a suspicious time. That tale comes back to Europe at the same time the knights come back from the Crusades. And if you take the salient characteristics of that tale, meaning the King Arthur and his 12 knights of the Round Table, like Jesus and his 12 apostles, and then you apply that same standard as the knights are telling their story of their Jesus and Mary, bringing it back and putting it in contemporary fictional tales in Europe, and you see that possibly exhibited also by the fact that you see the same character doing the same things. Again, the salient characteristics. Not Nathaniel. I almost said Nathaniel Bar Jonah, but that was that serial killer that may have fed me a human meat burger in Montana. Different tale on Operation GCD Sundays. Joseph Bar Mathia and Joseph Arimathea. So there you have Joseph Bar Mathia of the Gospel Jesus tales, and then you have the Joseph Bar Mathia of the King Arthur tale. And I would say they're doing the same things. They have the same name. So that's the writers of that story who are passing upon their history, their Knights Templar, because they think their viewpoint is they're descended from the bloodlines of Jesus and Mary. That's their king and their queen. Those are their royal bloodlines. And when we look at the Templars, we see that exhibited also within the struggles of the Magna Carta, the royal bloodlines. We see that in the Society of Cincinnati. It's not just the Huguenots and the Jacobites, the Protestant bloodlines, and notably the royal ones within, that comprise these organizations that descend from the Templars, it's also the Swedish, the Germanic, right? There's the Norwegians, right? So these all comprise of the Society of Cincinnatis too. We have all of these people represented.
Yeah,
from these different heritages.
Well, and the way I see it, when I started looking into the Society of Cincinnati, who it's as if they founded the group first, because I think they knew they were going to found the country, but they wanted to create and establish this clique first before they created the country, so that the clique could sort of run things, right? And in my mind, that's partly what's going on with the Society of Cincinnati. It's Washington starts this group so then they can start the country. It goes back to New Atlantis. It goes back to Francis Bacon, New Atlantis, and some things Nostradamus wrote about, and etc. But all these guys were initiates, Washington included. So I think that the Templars came first. Washington was among them, and a lot of these other fellows who started the Society of Cincinnati alongside Washington were also Templars. This is some of the things I'm starting to see here. It's that the country, I'm going to make a bold, kind of maybe a bold statement here, but this is what I'm seeing. So I'm just going to put it out there. Everybody says it's Masons that started this thing, that run this thing. Well,
right.
What if it's the Templars? And
it is,
and Masons, but mainly the Templars, because that's what
you're right on. You're right on, because I always tell folks, all right, well, if this is a Masonic country and all the U.S. presidents are Masons, where's the proof? Oh, there is none. Okay, well, every U.S. president was a member of the Society of Cincinnati.
Yeah, man. So that's what it is. And like, I don't want to get too. I want to show you something before we almost just dove right in the deep end.
You're spot on though, and I like to use Clan Vance as an anchor point, whether or not Abner Vance, my forefather, and the actual vice president's forefather, was a member of Clan Vance, which again I've documented is not the case through science and everything else, DNA evidence, etc. There, and others agree with me, like the Clan Vance DNA study agrees with me as well. They agree that Abner Vance is closely related to the descendants of Matthew Vance and Ann Jones Vance. Well, I argue they're looking at it from the wrong perspective, because Ann Jones Vance is the first cousin of Martha Dandridge Washington. So the reason why those descendants are closely related is not because of a Vance, even though that is his last name on paper, even though there's no documented birth. These matters, again, this is the secret history I'm referring to, though, as well. But relative to Clan Vance, put an anchor point in that is Patrick Vance, Sir Patrick Vance of the Barnbark Vances, that would be Abner's would-be ancestor, was an associate of King James. And so we see the Knights Templar families with the Jacobites around King James, right? And we see
Francis Bacon. Bam.
And there you go. And New Scotland, Nova Scotia, which he's often credited for the foundation of.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this. I think this all goes back to these older orders that come out of the Middle East, notably the Brothers of the East, who initiated the first couple Templars in Istanbul, and then those two guys, it was Hugh de Paynes and Godfrey, that were initiated by a Middle Eastern group, right?
Well,
actually, they were.
You are spot on,
Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. So the Brothers of the East came out of Greece, so they were Greek, but they were in Istanbul in Turkey, and they initiate the first two Templars, whose names are Godfrey and Hugh de Paynes.
Well, but let's look at Hugh de Paynes' ancestry. Who's his daddy, and what does he do?
Well, my point is like, this goes back to an older order. That's all that's my point. But yeah, go ahead.
You're spot on. No, you're spot on. And again, these are generational aspects, right? So we look at Hugh de Paynes' ancestry. He's got Sufism in his ancestry.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Exactly.
Yeah. So people often,
Druze.
I think there's a lot of things that are intentionally misdescribed about these organizations today. The Hashashins and the Assassins, as they're known as, and the Templars. Now, a lot of misconceptions about all these organizations. Nonetheless, they are the same organization. They were founded the same. They have the same organizational structure. They have the same uniforms, despite them going with the Islamic, red and white combo versus the Christian St. George red and white combo, or cross of, did I say St. George, St. Andrew? Cross of St. Andrew. Wait a second. No, wait, that is cross. I'm getting my brain hole's looped up here at the moment, sir. But
You're good,
they,
man.
they have the red and white motif with the cross, Templar cross, and then they have the white with the moon and the star there for the Hashis assassins. But it's because of Hugh Paynes and the founder of this organization. They have the same organizational structure. These were never different organizations that mashed together. They were the same organization from the start. And people often misdescribe the Crusades because you're like, wait a second. So again, these are the narratives we're sold as under broad senses and generalities in which to confuse us and propagandize us. Because if you look at the Crusades, you're like, oh, it's Christians versus Muslims. Is that what it's about? Because
Sure.
what I see are the same bloodlines, and you're saying they go further back. You are spot on. So let's look at who the Templars think they're Jesus and Mary are. And you just said where the foundation of the Templars were, courtesy of the Council of Clermont in France, and the so that was the administrative headquarters. The operational headquarters, what you're describing there with Hugh Paynes there in Turkey, modern day Turkey. Well, that's where the Templars think their ancestry is, the ancient kingdom of Edessa. Well, let's see who the kingdom of Edessa is comprised of. It's the machinations of a Judeo-Egyptian royal bloodline and a Persian royal bloodline. And what do we see in the narratives of the birth of Jesus? Well, that's what we see in the representation of the Magi's, including Balthazar, right? Including the Persian, king, magician, wizard dude, and then back to Clan Vance as an anchor point. Clan Vance. Now, again, I don't have any proof to say distribute it on these matters, but it has been long legend of Clan Vance dating back thousands of years to at least the 12th century or 11th century, and they're in all throughout France to what is now northern Italy. Clan Vance's battle call was "All Hail King Balthazar," because they claimed to be descendants of that same King Balthazar.
Right on. So yeah, they were in the Middle East. That's why I pulled this up.
Yeah, so we're
talking.
talking multi generational stuff, but we're also the other. I think the other misconception is it's not Judea. We're talking about the ancient kingdom of Edessa, Turkey, with the Templars. That is the first Crusades.
Yeah. So this is interesting, right? I wanted to show this up front before we got down these tangents, so I'm just going to pull it up now. This is a new discovery. It's 1400-year-old site, is a monastery found in the United Arab Emirates. I looked at the Smithsonian page as well on this. They've got an article up about this, and they're saying that this is a Christian cross, and it may be, but look at this thing. It's got, when you zoom in on it, what do we see there? Little Templar crosses.
Cross of St. George.
Yeah. And Saint George to them goes back to what you're saying, right? They were putting all these monuments to Saint George up all over the Middle East, and the Druze were doing it too. And the Druze
what year is this dated to? 1400 years
that's
ago?
what it says. Yeah, that's what it says. It doesn't say anything in this thing about it being Templar, though, but clearly you see the Templar crosses, right? I'm not crazy.
Well, yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. So where does the Templars get that cross from is the question then, right?
Yeah, which cross are we talking about? Are you talking about the main cross? Because I'm saying all these little.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, sir. Those are the ones I'm looking at. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you saying this is the cross of St. George as a
No,
whole?
it's not. Is it St. George or St. Andrew? Which one am I? My brain hole.
I think it's
my brain
St.
hole stuck
George.
tonight.
I
thought so.
George.
Yeah.
That's who they venerate. That's who the Druze venerate. And the Druze are closely knit with the Templars. They helped build Solomon's temple, apparently. Both
right.
times.
Well, so again, where do these symbols come from, right? Did the Templars just create that imagery or that symbol, right?
Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know much about it. I just see that this is a new discovery and it's got Templar crosses on it. And I thought that was interesting. And it comes out of, the UAE.
I think it's extremely interesting because if it's 1400 years old, that's after the time of St. George.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like on St. George. I should be, but I've read that they venerate St. George a lot.
What I'm inferring, sir, is St. George is in their bloodline, and they've been using that symbol of St. George since his time, and this comes after that time within those same bloodlines. I'm saying that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Okay. And I got another one I want to show you too.
And we know they use the same symbols in these bloodlines. Look at Scott Walter's work on the hooked X within these same, as he calls them, the Venus families, because they do Venus worship and goddess worship, which has been their biggest beef with the paternal religious orders of the Vatican and predecessing paternal religious orders before the Vatican. That has been the biggest beef with these bloodlines ever since.
Yeah, they definitely do venerate Venus, and I want to get more into that here in a little bit too,
And,
because
and,
that's.
and Scott Walter documents some of that worship in the symbols they use within their bloodlines as the hooked X.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I'm starting to
we see
see
the
that.
hooked X from King Tut to, when I said those Judeo-Persian kingdom of the kingdom of Odessa, if you trace the Judeo-Egyptian portion of that, it goes back through the bloodlines of Akhenaten. We see the hooked X going through Akhenaten, King Tut, all the way down through the kingdom of Odessa, all the way through the Vikings, Normans, Templars, into the society families here in America. And we see the hooked X on the Kensington runestone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm starting to find that there is goddess worship tied in with all this as well with the Templars,
I
big
think that's
time.
what the biggest issue is, right? So that's the biggest issue that sends us underground. You can call it occultism, et cetera. But if you want to get down to the greatest common denominator, because Operation GCD serves not just garbage can dude here, but greatest common denominator. That's what I used to call my private detective agency, because that's how I look at all things in this world. Because once you break things down to the greatest common denominator, starts to provide context and understanding of the circumstances. And when you see that the pattern here throughout time is this goddess worship of these same bloodlines, well, you can see why the paternal religious orders would have issues with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that could be a big reason as to why the Catholic Church had beef with them. It's probably not the only reason, but
There you
um,
go. It's
the,
not the only. You are correct, sir. It is a factor. You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
no, you're right, man. I'm starting to see that they were all about the goddess worship. I'm going to show you
Well,
something later that confirms that too. I know it's. I mean, we're talking the same language here. You already know it,
I
but
like your style.
I'm seeing it too, man, in my research. And like I wanted to throw this up too as like a little appetizer here before we get into all that. This is
I
the
like
Pausania.
appetizers.
Me too. This is the Pausania Temple. Okay. It's in Italy. It's in a little town out there. And
Yeah. What
this
town?
I think it's called Pausania is the name of the town.
Pausania. Can you spell that for me, please,
Yes,
sir?
sir. P O
Can you
S
use it in a sentence also? I'm just
P
kidding.
Possagno. Pausagno.
All right.
Pasagno,
I
something
just want
like
to see
that.
what this was on the map, because before this was Italy, like I was saying, the with Clay and Vance there and their night, their all hail King Balthazar stuff. So after the fall of the Templar, I tracked a knight of Clay and Vance, picking up bones across France and northern Italy. There, probably not far. I'll look here on a map in a second. Not far from this location, of the Sinclairs of the Roslin Chapel, Sinclairs of the Templars. So this is the 15th century. This dude's collecting bones and putting him into a Christian church there in northern Italy in the old province of Orange, which was at one point in time the province commanded there by the Templar Knights
Yes.
of the Vance clan.
Mhm. We'll come back to Sinclair too, or that family in a second. Let me tell you
So
about
when we're
this
looking
real
at this,
quick.
I just want to say that when we're looking at Italy, that before it was Italy, there
Mhm.
was a lot of connections with the Templar folks in this region, including
Mm.
again a major incident where this dude's collecting bones of all of his people. He was a Sinclair Vance and collect them all and put them in one. I'll look up the Christian chapel. It was in the old province of Orange there in northern Italy.
Okay. Mhm. Yeah, we'll see how close this is. Now listen to this, bro. This is built by a guy named Antonio Cavogna.
Yeah,
This is where he's buried, okay? He was a sculptor, right? He's Italian. He sculpted George Washington as the
no shit.
Roman y- as the Roman in the North Carolina State House. You know what I'm talking about? They have North
Yeah.
Carolina State House has a sculpture of George Washington and it's
See,
very Roman. The guy who's buried here sculpted it. A listener, actually it's more like a buddy of mine, told me to look into this guy, Cavonia. And
do I know what statue you're talking about, sir? That's good when I like it, but.
I knew you would, but
It's George Washington and a state founded by Clay and Vance. Captain David Vance, which would have been Abner's uncle on paper, was the delegate to the state to the Congress to start the state of North Carolina in 1789. So
yeah. Now,
It's a great statue. I had no idea that dude was buried here, though. I'm fascinated by all of this.
it gets a little deeper because I'm looking at this courtyard, right? I'm looking this guy up like Justin told me to. And I'm looking at this. I don't know why Jack Parsons is showing up down here in the corner of that.
I immediately just saw that dude. I'm like, what in the world is Marjorie Cameron and Jack Parsons doing down there?
I don't even know. But right here, I can't
How?
believe
No,
this
wait.
thing
How is
got-
that related, though? How is that related, dude? What is going on in life?
I don't know, bro. It just popped up. It's seemingly not related. I'm trying to blow this
I'm not
up,
convinced of it yet.
but it's not letting me. Anyway, in the courtyard, there's a Templar cross right here. Can you see that? There's
I
two. Of
can.
them. There's two of them. So I'm
That's what
thinking,
I'm saying, dude. How long have they been using the cross of St. George within these bloodlines?
well, they got this from the Anunnaki. Some of them say
Okay.
this cross right here is the one that they say they got from the Anunnaki, and it was red and everything. And I checked up on that, and sure enough, you go back to some of these old Sumerian pictures, inscriptions, depictions, etc. You'll see, or you'll read about it, but you'll see also Sumerian kings wearing that cross. It's an Anunnaki thing. I think
I
it's
did not know that. I did
and
not
guess
know
what?
that.
JJ, it's also associated with Inanna, Ishtar.
There
Going
you
back to
go.
this goddess thread.
There you go.
There you go.
And folks may think that there's not a lot of goddess worship just on our face in our modern era. Well, I would argue otherwise. So I would say that back in the ancient times, Babylonian times, as documented, it was you go to a site of worship of Ishtar and you would go pay tribute with money or some sort of goods of value. And well, we do that today. Millions of folks across the world, and specifically in America, every day they go to the Temple of Ishtar, and I call it the Temple of the Fish Goddess there, the Starbucks coffee shop, and they pay tribute with exponentially high costs for shitty coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what is the name of that goddess that's on the anyways, I'll think about it later. So I was going to
But
try to find a picture.
but that's a good point. So about how long have they been using that symbol too, dude, within these bloodlines?
Right.
And regarding these Sumerian tales of this kind of, they're not far off from the tales of the giants, right? As
Right.
far as a lot of my understanding of the Sumerian tales there's a lot of tales that are construed as, again, Zachariah Sitchin, funded by the Rockefellers, but ancient alien cargo cultists, you got to kind of, use your discernment and figure out fact from fiction within their tales. I formerly was one for 22 years with the Mormons, but what I'm saying there is, you have these tales of genetic manipulations, et cetera, and you have different sized humans as a result. We see that kind of within these mounds. And again, my theory is the folks within these bloodlines, they believe they are descendant from those giant humans at the base of those Adena style mounds. And my DNA studies would investigations would indicate the same. So my paternal DNA goes back to the Beaker people, according to modern day science folk. And the Beaker people were the mound building culture of Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
And one more thing, because I wanted to show this blown up, right? So there's the cross for people. There's two Templar crosses here, and this is this guy's tomb, essentially.
that's wild, dude. And this is great architecture relative to these same folks. So,
but wait,
the society venerates ancient.
But
Go ahead, sir.
One more thing. I'm sorry. This guy is linked to George Washington somehow because he did the skull. He was chosen to do George Washington's statue thing there. So like, I'm saying that maybe this guy was. Well, I'm seeing that this guy was a Templar, but I'm saying, is that why he was chosen to do the sculpture?
And there you go. So when we see these various bloodlines going back in the various areas of the world that they inhabit, we see in the Norman invasion of America to what is now Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, through the Law Meadows settlement that's recognized by those bastards of the UN back in 1964, but 1066, right? The 1066 Norman invasion of the UK from William the Conqueror and his two lieutenants. The Vance boys, they were his cousins. They were born in the same castle there in Normandy. Well, we also see that same group of folks, the 1066 invasion of Sicily. So the Sicilians are have the same bloodlines as the Templars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when we see these matters that go over there, and we see it maybe over the years, and we see an Italian guy like this building in the same style of architecture with that Greek revival, which gives us they venerate the society venerates the Roman Republic because I think they descend from the Roman Republic.
Yeah.
Cincinnatus. I think
Mhm.
Cincinnatus was a giant. That's why we see a 7.5 foot tall statue of Cincinnatus on the site that this group founded in the city of Cincinnati,
Yeah,
at their founding site.
it doesn't. I don't think it stops there. It does go back to Roman stuff. They were borrowing from Romans and all the things you mentioned there, but I think it goes back to the Greeks as well. Because remember, the Romans built based a lot of their thoughts off of what the Greeks had thrashed out before them.
Well, if I may, sir, let's differentiate a couple topics here. So organizations like the Vatican get compromised over time. For example, on the note of what you're saying right there, for example, we have an American Pope right now, the Vatican, of French Protestant origins, who has kinfolk in the French chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. It's documented. I've traced that down through his family trees and whatnot. So, on top of that, we see other, regarding just the concepts that we're looking at here with organizations that get compromised, and over time, the narratives that get spun around some subjects, right? Especially regarding the Templars.
Mm-hmm. Well, these Templars, they get around, right? Of course, we find their calling card in that Robert E. Lee monument that you and I talked about on a show before.
Dude, I was gonna
Go ahead.
bring that up here tonight, but go ahead, sir.
Well,
You're in my brain hole, sir.
let's
You're in my brain hole. That's a fascinating thing.
Well, let's just set
Fascinating
it up.
discovery.
That's what really put the nail in the coffin for me, and brought me to the conclusion that they were definitely here, and they were involved with the inner workings of this country and the building of this country and the building of this empire and the Francis Bacon concept of New Atlantis and some of the things Nostradamus talked about and some of the things that went back to Plutarch the Greek, etc.
Oh, I love Plutarch.
So, because the Greeks knew about this continent, they knew it was
That's
over here, right?
there. You go. No, you're spot on, sir. You're spot on.
But later down the line, after the country was started, I think some of these guys, like Robert E. Lee, seems like they were Templars too, and they were putting messages in these monuments, right? So, like in 2020, I think it was whenever during the riots of the 2020 time, they decide they're going to take down this Robert E. Lee monument because he was a Confederate. And they find on live TV or a live recording, the lady's got the gloves on, she's got the mask, she's going through this box that they pulled out of this monument, and she pulls out these pieces of paper. And she reads something out loud, and she says, "Oh, Knights Templar." And it's like, oops, we weren't really supposed
Dude,
to
it blew up my
record
brain
this.
hole, sir. I never even until you brought this to my attention, I never heard of it. Do you mind bringing that up so we can look at an example of that?
Yeah, I'll try, dude. Because what's weird about this is like I found that footage right before you and I talked, and we talked about it on that show. I went back and tried to find the footage, and I can't. It's
Well,
buried in a 3-hour long film, basically.
challenge accepted, sir. I will find it in the meantime after tonight's show, and
Okay.
we'll link it in here. But my point there is that's a great discovery. Okay, there emphasizes my entire basis of my theories here as well, including the Lees. And I'll put a pin in the Lee family. Them Lee boys are nothing but trouble, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put a pin in that for a second because again, when we're talking about these broad narratives and the propagandized narratives we live under. So we think of Rome as the Vatican. Well, there was the Republic of Rome, and that was the Cincinnatus who saved the Republic of Rome twice. And that's why George Washington thought I think he thought he was the reincarnated version, or at least was, living out that character basis, if you will, a hero's journey almost, because he came out of retirement twice to save America. Once as the general, and then secondly as the president. And neither didn't want to either time. So when we're looking at all of these things again to understand the nuances of the context, when we say Greek, ancient Greek, well, that's who Cincinnatus was. So the Roman Republic was a republic. You didn't have to be Roman. You were of different ethnicities, and then you were a Roman citizen in the republic. And that's no different. We see today here in America. You could be German, Scots, Irish, Norse, African, Chinese. You know what I mean? But you're a U.S. citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same difference there. with the Roman Republic,
Yeah.
right? Which is, we see the reincarnation of the Roman Republic with the America. So they operate the same in that capacity. So when we talk about ancient Greek stuff, that's where we're talking about the same bloodlines from Plutarch down to the Robert E. Lee boys and the Templars and everything else. This is what I'm saying is these things go back a long ways, and we can see them go back those ways through this example. So as I said
And
before,
it's as if they had things planned out, like
yeah,
down to this monument too. Like whoever put that box in there planned for that to be found, I guess at some point by another Templar. And it's almost like they're leaving clues for each other, like this. It's like a game of national treasure they play. But
oh man,
I look at it and I think that this was a lot of stuff that was planned out, right? Like I think the nation itself, I'm starting to think it was planned out. It's not my theory. It's Manly P. Hall who hatched that all out in a book.
absolutely. No, I've read that book.
Yeah. And that's what I think all this is. It's like the American Empire was a thought to these guys in this order for a long time. Even to Francis Bacon, this was a thought. They were talking about it as if it's something to come, something they were working on, something they were working towards. And it's like the spark was George Washington and getting all these guys together and starting this thing. It was like the spark, right? It came to life. Like it's like they manifested it.
Yeah, I think that's in large part accurate. I would say that George Washington did not want to start the Society of Cincinnati. That is first and foremost. I think what he did was he intervened and took part and took control of it once he realized what was going on.
Hmm.
Because he'd already faced numerous coups. And when you're saying they're trying to start it, in part, yes, they're trying to restart it though.
Hmm.
These families had long controlled this land. This was Atlantis, in my opinion. When Manly P. Hall says the new Atlantis, because this was the original Atlantis. It's not buried under the ocean anywhere. This was it. And these families knew it, and they've known about it because they've been here the entire time. And they didn't used to murk all the natives, as we like to describe it today. And we see that emphasized with the Micmac tribes, with the Cherokee tribes, and some of the other Algonquin tribes, with their obvious influences from what we would describe now as Western or European influences. When, be it the cross of St. George and the Micmac flag, their alphabet and whatnot, and other symbols being derived from the St. Clair's of Roslyn Chapel fame, et cetera, et cetera. So we see these things being emphasized in a different narrative than what we're described in our propagandized crown history of America.
Yeah,
But
and I
there is
think
a lot of evidence of it. And your discovery of that Robert E. Lee statue is that it is exhibiting a pattern of behavior that folks, there's a plan being hatched throughout time, throughout these
yes.
families, and they have different sites. When you're talking about national treasure stuff, all of these different sites they bury things in, they do line up, it seems. And I was pointing these things out on Reddit years ago. I was telling you a little bit this before the show. Before I started my podcast, I would comment on Reddit and things like Scott Walters, social medias and whatnot about some of these matters. And on Reddit, I posted a lot of these details regarding the Templars of America, the very factual, salient characteristics around such. And someone replied to me with what I thought was one of the most hilarious responses ever, but it's kind of what we just said with National Treasures. Is they said that's a great tale. It's a bunch of nonsense. I'm paraphrasing. You may as well write that as the next National Treasure movie, National Treasure 3. I'm like, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah, it's not. Well, that's what this is. We're living the
Well, years
national
later now,
treasure.
what? Yeah, exactly, sir. Years later, that was 2015. So years after that, we're finding evidence of the exact theories I was reporting on Reddit in 2015. And when folks tell me that's fanciful and fictional and it's part of a movie, this is what I mean by why they put things in movies.
So yes, the Templar records that I've reviewed in this research recently suggest that the Sinclairs did indeed have a treasure that they hid over here, and apparently in 1765, Ben Franklin got into an old Templar vault on Oak Island, and they got that Sinclair treasure, part of it at least, and they used it to fund the American Revolution. Then another guy came along later named Captain Tim McLaren from Clan McLaren. That was around 1769. He returned to Oak Island and got the rest of that treasure, or a lot more of it. I don't know if there's still treasure there or not. I would suggest that that treasure is probably just no longer there at this point. But my
Yeah.
point is the Templars put it there in the first place, and it was the Sinclair family that did it. And that treasure was used in this plan that you're talking about. This plan to start up or reenact or whatever you want to call it, to plan to make this American empire just that, an empire. And that treasure is old stuff. This is old Middle Eastern treasure that goes back to Petra. These guys were storing some of this stuff in Petra. So
Nineveh.
talk about movies, right? Indiana Jones, Petra, like
Yeah, Nineveh.
well,
The ancient library of Babylon.
yeah. Well, yeah, there's a couple places, right? And but Petra, I don't want to go too far down the Petra rabbit hole, but we didn't even know about that place. It wasn't made a UNESCO World Heritage Site until the 80s. And
Yeah,
then
and that's a very interesting site because that's the one you see in Indiana Jones Part 3, the Knights Templar Last Crusades.
and it's
It's there.
weird because when you look at when that was made a World UNESCO site and you look at when they made that movie, somebody over there at Lucas's camp knew some things, because that information wasn't out yet about that site when they started making that movie, in my opinion.
Oh, Lucas was an occultist. He basically used the book Spear of Destiny to write his Indiana Jones tales on top of. And I would argue he used a real character who, by all appearances, was a hereditary descendant of the Society of Cincinnati as the character basis for Indiana Jones. That man's name was Augustus Laplangen. His father and grandfather were powerful naval commanders within that French chapter of the Society of Cincinnati, and he got shipped over here to America as part of the Society's start of the Smithsonian to explore and expressly survey the mounds of the Squire and Davis ancient their survey of the ancient architecture of the Mississippi Valley in 1848. Laplanchen was their assistant. He would then go on to study all of the Mayan cultures and et cetera, all the way down to Peru. He actually discovered shit in Peru that he doesn't get credit for today, that folks 40 years after him get credit for. So that's to show you this factional divide about some of these matters. And you see a society guy getting diminished, but he is very much the real life Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
He would argue that the culture here in America predates the ancient Egyptian culture. And there was from essentially the Yucatan to the Grand Canyon, was his theory, consisted of that culture before ancient Egypt.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about something else because we talked about how a lot of this comes out of the Middle East. I think I know that there's that Roman Greek influence there, but I think that the occult order that these Templars originally came out of was like a Middle Eastern thing going, like you said, Sufi, and I would add to that the Druze, right? The Templars had a secret hand grip that they used that they got from the Druze, and this is a very fascinating group. They're like an occult pre-Masonic group who helped build Solomon's temple, and then later down the line, when you see the second temple being built by King Herod, who was an Edomite, Petra's an Edomite site. They were using Templars to guard that place, right? So all this information is just getting passed down from this Middle Eastern group, in my opinion, and that's where some of this treasure came from in the first place. But what you see is like that the Native Americans over here knew some of those secret hand grips that were Templar.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm saying that they were believe what you want about this treasure out there. Like I'm telling you, that Oak Island treasure is a Templar thing, and I think it's gone. But believe what you will about that. But they were over
Well,
here, and the hand grips prove it because they
if I
knew the
can make
secret handshakes.
yes, sir. And if I can make 2 points to bookmark exhibit those some some facts around the Society of the Cincinnati, the descendants of the Templars. Because again, George Washington, 10 of his forefathers, his 14th through 17th great grandfathers, 10 men, were the 10 of the 25 knights that brought us Magna Carta 564 approximately years later. Their grandson, George Washington, brings us Magna Carta 2.0. So I don't think these things, when you're talking about plans, dude, that right there is exhibiting of a long-term plan.
It's a long-term plan, man. And like, that's what it is. It's a
Yep.
long-term plan. I love that. That's
So,
what I was trying to articulate earlier. That's just
and
the
if you
best
want
way to put it.
yes, sir. If you want to take that back a bit further and talk about these ancient orders and secret societies that operate within them with this treasures of ancient past that have been passed down these bloodlines, there's a member of the Society of Cincinnati. He was a major out of the New York chapter. His name's escaped me at the moment. His mother was a Mohawk Indian. I think it was Mohawk. Yeah, I believe it was Mohawk. In the Finger Lakes region there of New York. So as a result of his mother, because these are maternal, again, this is back to that goddess worship. The Cherokees operate the same way, much as these other Algonquin tribes. They have maternal hierarchies. So, for example, on that note, my forefather, George Lowry,
Yeah,
was a
it's
Scotsman Cherokee.
Melu
His mother was Cherokee. That's how he became deputy chief of the Cherokee.
it's what you said earlier, Melusine. The name just came. Melusine. That's the goddess on the Starbucks logo. That's a matriarchal bloodline that goes back to a female goddess.
Yeah, I just think when I say Ishtar, I just think we change the name over time with language.
Sure.
It's the same character. You could call it Hecate. You could call all these things. You call it Columbia, which is what the society calls it.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's one main goddess that all this revolves around, and that seems to be this Ishtar Inanna Sumerian character. That's as
So
far back as I can trace it. But like, like the what is it? There's a country over in Europe. It's a landlocked country, and it's a real small little country. And it's like the when you look at I'm trying to remember the name of it, but when you look into the
Liechtenstein.
no, I think it starts with an L though. But when you look into the country, I'll look it up here in a minute. But like the royal family actually traces their bloodline back to Melusine
I think that's Liechtenstein, sir.
for real. So there's something to that. And like the Druze, right? They were one of these Middle Eastern orders. They're still around today, but that's where a lot of this stuff kind of uh got injected into the Templars plan, right?
For sure.
They were following that, and I talked to you about this. The Druze followed that ancient Aldebaran star knowledge of like when to plan big events, right? When to make your move when in conjunction with the stars, right? So when Aldebaran is over the moon, not eclipsed, over the moon, it's that's when you make your big moves. It's that whole hey diddle diddle, the cat played the fiddle, the
All right.
cow
Wait.
Taurus, the cow Taurus jumps over
Yep.
the moon.
There you go.
That's when you make big moves. That's the star system that's encoded in the star fort in New York City and the obelisk alignment in New York City that Vanderbilt put his Egyptian obelisk on. That right on that alignment. It all goes back to Aldebaran, but it goes back to
Yep.
this older knowledge that the Druze practiced.
Well, again, I think what you're describing, we see that again here today through these same bloodlines. So, regarding because well, again, so why would the Templars come over here to this Atlantis world and get along with the folks here? Because they're all goddess worshiping cultures, right? So, and again, we see that continuing to be emphasized here, not only through the Micmacs, through my forefather George Lowry down there in Cherokee Town, and he was friends with George Washington, by the way, George Lowry. Now, his mother again was the reason why he was made deputy chief, and his boss John Ross was the chief, and his mother again, he was a Scotsman, and his mother was Cherokee. So, there's a certain degree, though, I think some of these men aren't even let into the secrets. And I'll give you an example relative to the society in a moment. But John Ross, a descendant from Robert de Ross, that same Templar Knight, it was in charge of Magna Carta, the same Templar Knight's the forefather to George Washington. So we see these folks continuing to associate here in the new Atlantis in America over time. But I question how much even some of those men are let into the ancient secrets. And here's why. There's a major out of the New York chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. His mother was a Mohawk. He became the chief of the Mohawk up there. I think it was the Mohawk. I might be misquoting which exact tribe it was, but nonetheless, he was made the chief. But he said himself, he was not let into the tribe's secrets. They had an internal order based upon Masonic principles, because he was a Mason as well. And that he was not allowed into that because he was not pure blood within the tribe.
Yeah,
Even though they're a goddess worshiping tribe and he's made the chief, he's still. It's almost like people describe today. There's levels of top secret clearances above the president. Well, there you go.
Yeah, the Cherokees also had an order, a Masonic order. Well, it was
No,
their
you're
own
right.
version
And
of
it
that.
operated the same way. But I just don't have the quotes. I don't have the
So,
quotes from those men the
that's
same way.
When the Templars came over here and started communicating with these native tribes, and they find out, oh, they have their secret order too, they sit down and they talk and they connect over that stuff, and I think they probably trade ideas and stuff like that. And it's exactly the Micmac tribe 100% is involved with this. Like there's old Templar records that say that they were working very closely with the Micmacs. Like they said that the Micmacs would give us squash and beans and we would hunt bear and deer, and we would trade, and like we would share essentially. They said they would the Templars said that when they would hunt bear and deer, they would share with the Micmacs. So there was a working relationship over here, and who knows how far that goes back? Because what I was looking for here is
What I'm saying, sir, we
this
don't know how far it goes back.
right. Well, they've got their symbols in here
Well,
where
we see ancient Celtic in West Virginia.
yeah,
This is the same bloodlines.
I'm trying to find this diagram anyway. I'm not gonna be able to find it. There's a diagram in here of the Micmac language, and you can clearly see that some of the symbols are Egyptian. So I don't mean to like just you know drop a bomb on the
Don't say Reformed
podcast,
Egyptian. You might sound too Mormon there, sir.
but there were other cultures coming over here interacting with the Native Americans, possibly even
100%. And I don't want to sound like a Looney Tune, but I don't think it. So when I hear these tales of Tartaria, no, and again, I don't want to go into these matters too far because I've had my odds with these Tartarians over the years because none of their theories incorporate the mounds. If you're not going to incorporate the ancient architecture of America and that, for that matter, the world, then what are we talking about here? You don't have a complete theory; you have an incomplete theory. But I think they're onto something. I don't throw the baby out with the bathtub, even the Tartarians. No offense to you, sir, if you have any belief systems or the listeners in Tartaria. I simply don't put much. It's a reincarnation of a lot of things.
yeah.
What I do think is correct there, sir, within those theories are again, there's salient characteristics I think that are spot on. I think a lot of it's propaganda. If I'm going to be quite
Sure.
honest, it's
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff within that
well,
Tartaria thing.
I
That
can draw the same
subscribe
connections
to.
to Lemuria, the Theosophists, and all that stuff that goes out of Mount Shasta. So, but my point being there is I don't want to diminish anyone's thoughts. Again, I could be wrong, but my point being is we see these ancient structures that folks identify within the Tartaria theories. My apologies. The I think they're onto something. So let's consider these matters of this ancient Greek system. We see that Society of Cincinnati with that ancient Greek architecture they venerate and they continue to construct, or they adapted because their ancestors were here and they were the ones who built that from the ancient Greek times, the same times they were built over there in the old world. Because we're propagandized under a narrative of history that we don't understand, and then we're continue to be propagandized, I would argue, through these theories of Tartaria that don't incorporate the mounds, that don't consider the Society of Cincinnati, that don't consider the bloodlines, they go right back to the same architecture we see here today, but we're appropriating into some weird culture that has limited understanding or knowledge or even documentation of.
Yeah, I've got thoughts on that. I just don't want to go down the whole Tartarian thing, but I think I agree with what you said for the most part there. I mean, yeah, like you got to account for in a lot of these. What I see that I do like in the Tartarian circle is they'll show the pictures of the buildings
Oh
that
yeah,
are
there's
sitting
some
on
good
top
stuff there.
of are sitting
Yeah,
on top of older buried buildings. So, but that goes back into like this. Well, these were our cities were here for a much longer time than they're telling us,
yeah.
and then they go back to this mound builder time.
There you go.
Yeah,
And again, we start
you
tracking the
got to factor
bloodlines,
that
the
in.
philosophies, the
Mhm.
architectures. All you start building a coach and site picture of all of this. Again, I'm not diminishing anyone's theories or thoughts, but you start applying actual known knowns and facts there. Well, it starts to seem like there was an old culture here, and it's the same bloodlines.
Yeah, hmm I know. I got to show you something too, man, because this.
And yes, sir.
I think we're getting up to like a main event here in this podcast. I want to show
Yeah.
you something here in a second, but go ahead. What are you gonna
Well,
say?
once you do that, I'll bring us back to the Lee boys when you're done with that and that treasure you were talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna. I might blow your mind with this. I might not. We'll see what happens.
I'm
Uh,
preparing for a mind being blown here, sir.
this is
Brain hole in preparation for being blown. Please continue.
yes. You might know about this, or you might not. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Do you know about the New Mexico Templar stones?
Yeah, dude. There's a lot of interesting stuff in New Mexico, despite there not being mounds in that state. That is a state uniquely without mounds, but we are the ones who drew borders around that state in the first place. So
Hmm
that should be of note why those borders were drawn in to a region, specifically carving out an area that has no mounds. And again, one of the two states in the union that do not.
Okay, so I think what we're dealing with here, and let me point out here, there's an 8-pointed star of Ishtar on this thing, by the way, at the very top.
Oh shit. Okay.
Um,
Yep.
we go
Yep.
back to what we've talked about with the goddess thing, and then you've got the
Yep.
Templar cross here. So the Rio Grande. I think that
The big river.
we were talking on a previous show about how, we know that the people were using the Mississippi as an ancient highway. And you and I got to talking about St. Lawrence River. And I'm like, yeah, Plutarch, speaking of Plutarch, as far back as
Love Plutarch.
Plutarch, the Greeks knew that you could come over here and sail the St. Lawrence River and get down
Yep.
into the Great Lakes. But I failed to mention the Rio Grande and that the use of that river. Because if you follow the Rio Grande as far up as Albuquerque, that's where you start to see these guys, the New Mexico Templar stones. So it would appear that the Templars and people from the Middle East, because there are Middle Eastern symbols on these as well, were not only coming down the St. Lawrence River, they were also coming up from the Gulf and going using the Rio Grande. And these actually kind of remind me of the Great Cross of Henday. It's a similar type of monument that was found in Spain that's riddled with alchemical symbols. Like
No shit,
totally.
dude.
Yeah, man. So this is like
How are you spelling this? Temple Hendays? What are we saying here?
just a temple. Wait, this is just New Mexico Templar
No,
stones.
the one in
Oh,
Spain. The one in Spain.
the Great Cross of Henday. It's over there near the Pyrenees Mountains, man. It was a hot spot
Yeah.
for alchemists and occultists and all that. But
No shit, dude. It does look very similar in nature.
yeah, but I mean, this goes back to well, the Templars put that here for a reason, right? This sort of thing. And I was just looking into these Pike letters, and Pike in some of these letters talks about how he went out west, right? And was looking for this type of thing. Pike was a Templar, from what I can tell. Albert Pike, who the Freemason, everybody knows. But anyway, in his letters, he's talking about New Jerusalem and New Atlantis, and it seems like he's using those two terms interchangeably. And he says that the Templars were here preparing this New Atlantis concept, and he even brought the Mormons into it. He said that it's the same thing that Brigham Young was trying to do when Brigham Young placed his institution on the prime meridian out there. But
Yep.
he says, but only difference is the difference between us Templars and Brigham Young is that Young wasn't clued into this the Templar way, essentially. Like he didn't venerate the goddess. Basically, is what he was saying. Because I've got a quote here from Albert Pike in one of these letters. He says, Young didn't understand the signs, symbols, and tokens left behind by our brothers who coveted the goddess.
There you go.
And
Goddess
I would
worship.
suggest that yes, you've got the 8-pointed star of Ishtar right there. Those signs, symbols, and tokens left out west, I think is probably part of what he's talking about. At the
Well,
very least,
now were they left out west, or was this the remnants of an ancient civilization?
I think this was part of the plan. But they
That's
could
what I'm
have put
saying.
it.
So
But JJ, they
what?
could have put it on the grounds of an ancient civilization.
That's what I'm saying. So if you know where your bloodlines and your history goes from, and then you come over here to plot these markers, and you're putting these things there. So this thing today, this tale comes. They're like, oh, someone brought this back from the Middle East. Isn't that the prevailing narrative for this artifact?
This is so new. I never heard anybody talking about this.
Oh
There's
yeah, I
one
think
guy
the
who
prevailing
mentioned
narrative is, yeah, the prevailing narrative is that this was discovered. It was in the lobby of a hotel, and
yes.
there is a bit of a uh they know the lineage of the hotel is like, well, we got it from this rancher. This rancher said he found it in this forest,
Yeah.
and this picture's allegedly of that finding. So, but today they're like, oh no, someone brought it from the Middle East and just dropped it off here. There is a narrative around this device or these artifacts of all of it, that kind of nature, right? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, that's
To
right. Yeah.
discredit it.
Actually, I think the guy mentioned a personal theory that he thought maybe this had come over from Spain or something like that. I don't
So,
remember
but
if
I
it
think
was
it's
Spain or
interesting.
what.
It is a marker, right? And if we're looking at these kind of religious marker or
But
ritual markers, right?
right, but here's the thing about that. Eh, Even if it came over from the Middle East, the Templars still probably made it. It just means they carved it over there and then they put it on a ship and brought it over here and used it for as some sort of a marker or whatever it's being used for. You get what I'm saying?
I think that's exactly what we're looking at, and that's what I'm getting at. I'll give you another example right now. So we have the Abbey of New Clairvaux. I think you and I discussed this previously.
Hmm.
Do you mind if I share this with you?
No, let me stop share so you can. There's a couple of these before we move from this. There's a couple of these Templar stones, and they have very similar depictions, but some varying depictions on them. But anyways,
Well, that's what I was getting at though. Also, so if you're the Templars and you know you're this ancient history that I was saying, like that LaPlongeon fellow, that Society of the Cincinnati guy was tracking. Like after he did all the mound surveys, that's what he was tracking. That was his mission for the next 30 years, really.
mhm.
And again, this is them tracing their bloodlines. So if you're tracing your bloodlines that area and they're tracking sites that their previous ancestors had marked, whether it's the Kensington Runestone, whether it's the Newport Temple or Rhode Island Tower,
Mhm.
these are all. Not only are they serve all of these things serve multiple purposes, and
Oh,
you.
and
You, you see their multifaceted use, but again, we see that with the mounts. They serve multifaceted uses as
yeah.
well.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the Los Lunas Decalogue stone.
Well,
So
that's what I was going to get to next. Is right by the Lost Lunas Decalogue Stone
it
was where this was
is.
located.
Okay, it is, and we're on the same page then because here's the Gulf of Mexico, right? And you come up you go up the Rio Grande and right around Albuquerque. On one side of the river, you found these Templar stones. On the other side of the river, you have the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, which features lines of different languages: Canaanite, Phoenician, Hebrew, Etruscan, Cyrillic. Personally, I think that part of what happened there is that the Phoenicians did so much business with everyone that they spoke all those different languages.
For sure, dude. It's not again, it's not we're getting I don't want to get wrapped up in the Phoenicians to this, Phoenicians to that. It's the goddess worshiping bloodlines of these cultures, and they work together and they continue to work together. So when we see them Phoenicians, they're gonna adapt to the principles of their other,
Well, the Templars got their
neighboring.
maps from the Phoenicians. It's all connected.
It's all the bloodlines. It's all
Yeah.
the bloodlines.
Hmm.
It's all bloodlines. So and again we see Phoenician burials within these mounds.
Oh yeah.
We see ancient Hittite script within these mounds. Ancient Hittite script like used near and around that area of Turkey where the Templars started, where the first crusade occurred, where the ancient kingdom of Edessa was, where I've tracked the ancestry of Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus, the Greek ancient Greek of ancient Greek heritage there with his ancestry, a Roman citizen, to the ancient kingdom of Edessa with King Akbar. Is this Akbar, who would be the other Jesus listed in the War of the Jews? And according to Bocephus, I'm sorry, my apologies, that's Hank Jr. Josephus, War of the Jews, and the so what I'm saying is there's a lot of things that we have known knowns about, and again the known knowns with the Templar families is that's who their Jesus is. That is this Akbar fellow, and again there's interactions and correlations with that with the Quintus Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus tale. If you look back far enough to the same geographical areas. So when we were talking about these groups, I'm just saying that we should, it is the Phoenicians. There are elements of that. There's elements of,
Oh yeah.
all of these different cultures, the
Sure.
Celts, right?
Yeah, it's probably a bloodline thing. It's, secret societies, they knew about New America or North America, New Atlantis, and then they had all these different New Atlantis type phrases for it. But yeah, they seem to have been in on the secret about these lands over here and had these plans for them. And yeah, and you're right. Like we don't have to get hung up on Phoenicians, but I'm seeing that too. Like I'm seeing Phoenician stuff in burial mounds here in Tennessee, and purple
No, yeah.
dye, and all kinds of wild stuff. And
Uh, uh,
my point more is like how they're using these river systems, right? And to travel, how they're used. Because here's another one. I got to throw this up here.
yeah, I
Um,
can't, please do, because I can't figure out how to share on, I'm not, oh, here it is on Zoom. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
well, let's try that next. So this is something Fritz Zimmerman posted. Shout out to him. He's been on the show before.
Oh, nice. I like his work, dude. He's done some good mount stuff.
Well, look at this article here about these canals because they were coming up. Let me set this up. The ancient people were coming up these rivers, right? You have St. Louis. It's an ancient city we call Cahokia on the border of Missouri. or Missouri.
I'm glad you're
And
bringing this up because this ties right into my next point that I'm going to share with you,
great.
sir. You're in my brain hole again, Tim. I don't know if I like you, but I like your style, though.
Well, Fritz posted this really cool article about the canals they found in Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Not too far from Cahokia, right? So it says 70 miles of ancient Babylonian Amorite giants canals are described in Missouri. Dr. G.C. Swallow, while at the head of the Geological Survey, called attention to them and described one, which was 50 feet wide and 12 feet deep. There can be no doubt that the ancient inhabitants had constructed with a skill which would not do no discredit to our own engineers a system of connecting canals which must have been necessitated by an extended internal trade, by which required boats of respectable dimensions. So yeah, they could tell that's a guy from the 1870s talking there. Like, I think we would find the means to
Right.
simplify
Not
that
modern
today.
lingo, is it?
Right, right. But this is from in one of these history of Missouri books. So, but anyway, look. I mean, canals, right?
Well,
Another crazy faction or factor of our ancient world. Canals.
for sure. Well, in that same region, and I'm gonna talk about Cahokia in one moment, but let's look at nearby Cahokia. When the Society of the Cincinnati, all the way down to St. Louis, named after King Louis the 16th there or whatever, from the one who sanctioned the French chapter, Marie, that's why we have Marietta, Ohio, a mound city founded and designed by General Arthur St. Clair of the Roslyn Sinclairs, the last executive of the Continental Congress before the last executive officer, the president, if you will, before George Washington, a very close confidant and associate of George Washington, who he put in charge of the Northwest Territory. In that Northwest Territory expansion, we see all of this area around Cahokia being named after ancient Egyptian cities all the way down to Memphis.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, you come
So
up.
that's a society that did that. That's the society that is these bloodlines that did that.
Yeah, you come up the Mississippi, and there's so many examples of this, dude. I don't even know where to start. One that came to mind is where the Ohio branches off the Mississippi, like you're heading towards Evansville, which which was an ancient city, by the way, as well. They call it Angel today. There was a city there that they call Angel, but it's right there in Evansville. But anyway, right where the Ohio splits off, um, you've got a little place there still on the map today called Joppa, right before you get into
Yep.
Evansville. Joppa is the ancient port of Israel.
Yes, sir.
Why do we have that title here? Right? It's because
Yep.
these people, and I think speaking of a branch off the Mississippi, you got the Arkansas River, right? Branches off the
Kansas. Yep.
goes up as far as Des Moines, Iowa. I'm pretty sure that they were traveling that too. They went up probably as far as they could, because right where Des Moines is, there's a waterfall after that. So they probably couldn't get the ships past that. But they probably settled the area that would become Des Moines, right? And right now, there's a dam there called Red Rocks Dam. There are 6 towns underneath that artificial man-made lake. So I have to ask the question, what else is under that lake?
Every I
Ancient
just
stuff.
yeah. I like where we're at, sir. Again, we've been burying all these things. There's a lot of evidence that's been buried, like you're saying. The idea that no one traveled the waters of ancient past, and again, it is these bloodlines, and we see it again from the ancient mound builders who had a great understanding of astronomy and mathematics to build Serpent Mound, this 1,300, nearly 400-meter mound. This, I would argue, is a sperm and egg, not a snake and a sun. But it used to have a giant statue in that sun, by the way, an obelisk. But this mound, I would argue, is a sperm and an egg. Depicts it's a representation of the creation of life, and is a calendar of sustaining that life because it reads everything in the night sky. And sun, from the sun, the moon cycles, the changes of the seasons, the equinoxes, etc. So using logic and reason, when we're talking about goddess worshiping sex cults, that ain't a snake and a fucking sun. That's a sperm and an egg, and that's why they put a giant statue in the sun in that egg. But anyhow, we have 3 7-foot giants found in the Adena mounds right by there, well documented. on that same site. So again, so if we're seeing that these culture that I said, if those giants are the folks that are the ancestors of the Templars and the Society of Cincinnati, and they've passed down this advanced understanding of mathematics and astronomy, well, they've always been sailing. That's how you sail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I don't want to
You
get
navigate by the night sky. So these people understood that for a long time.
They
So
did.
they're all over the place. That's why we see Templar stuff in Goa, India, Madagascar, and I would argue the samurai people of Japan, the Ainu, specifically the Ainu ethnic group, are descendants of the same people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have red-haired, red-beard, blue-eyed, expert swordsmen on assaults on horses in the 12th century or 13th century, in northern Japan and Northern Europe. Come on, man. This is the propaganda. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying these are the propagandized things we're under. That let's use some logic and reason. These folks have been navigating the world forever, and again, they've been sanctioned forever.
And I've said it before on here. I'll say it again. The 3,500-year-old, I think it was 3,500-year-old Canaanite shipwreck that was found in recent days. The Canaanites were coming over here. That's why I think we can look at something like the Lost Lunas Decalogue stone and see the remnants of those people. But here's the deal with fitting the Templars back in real quick. Like those Templars got their maps from somebody, including Columbus. And I'm thinking about Friday the 13th, 1307. Templars had 16 ships in Rochelle Harbor, France, ready to roll. They knew the hammer was about to come down on them. They knew that they were going to be further oppressed. They knew King Philip the Fair was going to come for them. And they had the ships ready to go. So that's what they did. They didn't just cease to be, right? They weren't. History suggests that this group was totally stomped out. It wasn't in 1315. And I know you know that, but in 1315, they were not completely wiped out. They went all over the place, including here, and some even hid out in the King's Cave in Scotland and left goddess symbols on the cave walls and all that. It was right on the ocean. So they were
spot on, sir.
They were waiting for a ride, right? Like they dispersed, but the game wasn't game over for the Templars. They just dispersed, and we can see places like King's Cove where they hid out and waited for a ride, probably to the New World, right? So,
the New World to us, the Old World to them.
Yes, exactly. When you're on the run from tyranny and from dogmatic religious institutions, North America is your place.
Let me ask you this though again, because we're looking. I want to. You're spot on. I just want to expand your scope a little bit. So, they were ready for these to be sanctioned. They were ready because their ancestors were sanctioned. Be it the Cathars, right? Mm-hmm. Be it the you go back to we can call them the Lost Tribes. That's why we see on the Bat Creek stone out of a mound in Cherokee country in Tennessee there. For the people of Judea is inscribed in 1st century AD Hebrew, buried in a stone, an official dig by the Smithsonian, and the Cherokee had to sue to get it back.
See, that's almost a different show in my mind, because the Hebrews were definitely here. I know that.
Same bloodlines, sir. Same bloodlines. You think Hebrews, when you're saying Hebrews, you're thinking rabbinical Hebrew Judaism, and that was invented by the modern day Vatican Roman Empire. So if we want to say Hebrews in the Knights Templar bloodlines, as I said before, that ancient kingdom of Edessa was the goddess worshiping, sanctioned royal bloodlines of Persians and of the Judeo-Egyptian faith. The pre-rabbinical Judeo-Egyptian faith that included Zoroastrianism, and what we would a lot of call astrological aspects, and some pre-rabbinical Judaism. So we see those are the Hebrews I'm talking about, sir.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that there was some non-bloodline, non-Templar Hebrews that were over here as well, personally.
That I have no doubt of. But when we're talking about the mound building bloodline cultures that we're describing and the folks who left these artifacts, the folks that built that Hanukkah mound, I just did the anatomy of a mound cover up the other night here on Operation GCD Sundays, specifically talking about all of the cover up and factors involved in the cover ups and the groups involved, but also focusing on the Hanukkah mound, which is a mound that I personally located based upon the maps of the Society of Cincinnati, despite some elements of the NSA telling me it's located otherwise. That's a different story altogether. Why is the NSA involved, right? Mm-hmm. I would argue these same bloodline families use Freemasonry or whatever other form of secrecy they can, and whatever manifestation of these secret orders they can, be it a unintelligent agency like the NSA or otherwise, or the Freemasons, to operate under a veil of secrecy to accomplish their goals. That's all we're looking at there. But there are elements of individuals I've communicated with who published an article saying they found the Hanukkah mound in a location. It's not where it's at. Again, I asked them if they read the map, and they refused to answer that question. They kept telling me they have all this, data, and they got their NSA, and they got, technology. And I'm like, that's cool, dude. I have a map from 1803. Did you read that map? And then they never did. But my point being, there is, we see evidence of all of this ancient Hebrew culture here in America. So I have no doubt there'll be other ones here, but ones that build these mounds are the same bloodlines.
I think that this place just throughout history just served as this magnet for people who were being oppressed in general. I'm focusing on the Templar part of this today because it gets overlooked and it's history. So like we need to put it out there as such, right? But again, like when you're on the run from tyranny, from dogmatic religious institutions and tyrannical governments and all that stuff, I'm repeating myself here because I think therein lies a very important message for us here today living in this country. And that is, we need to keep this place the wild, wild west. There's a reason why this works. We're going down this road right now where we're bringing in too many rules. There's too many factions of government and big corporations and just establishments that are trying to take over right now. Whether
it's a story as old as Jesus, sir.
Yes, but this is a refuge for people who don't like to live under these rules. That it's always been that way. We got to keep it that way. This is the wild, wild west. It was the wild, wild west before it even became the old west. So before there were shootouts and all that, it was just that kind of a place. And there's a reason why this works.
You're right. It's and now there's been misinterpretations of this over time. And my understanding, the Algonquin people, the nations in which America was formed upon, through a ceremony and a ritual on the banks of the Schuylkill River with William Penn in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. The Algonquin chief, officially hands over this land to William Penn. And there's a small statue. It's a giant statue, but it's a smaller version there today, an obelisk on a mound in Penn Park, where this ceremony occurred, this ritual occurred. But it's my understanding that is the terms of which Algonquin comes from. It is essentially the refugees of other nations. It's the gatherings of all these refugees. So, and that is the nature of America. And again, this is the Atlantis. So, can you find me another nation, even as we've drawn the lines today, that has the same resources, be it animals, be it natural resources, be it life, whatever, be it the ability to have environments, waterways, and again, the environments to have livestock, you need to have water, right? To perpetrate life in livestock or human varieties, sir, you're going to need some liquid, some waters there.
Yeah, the roads and the waterways to trade and to travel and to build an economy. We built this economy off of these rivers that we're talking about today.
Precisely. So people are looking for Atlantis. We're on it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why it's been talked about in the shadowy world of initiates like Francis Bacon for so long. I mean, they knew about this place and they knew that what the potential it held. And I think that's why they sent a bunch of Templars in here and found this thing to begin with.
Well, again, sir, they're just regaining their old property, Magna Carta style, like King John gave away all of the Templars' land back to the Vatican in 1213 via edict after kidnapping a Knight of Clan Vance and then signing that edict in a Knights Templar Abbey in France. King John did. Of Robin Hood fame. This is the story of Robin Hood. They come back. All their land had been given to the Vatican. They fight for it back. That's what this fight is. When they're starting the new Atlantis, it's fighting for their old land back. It's fighting for their rights and liberty back. The same way George Washington's 10 of his forefathers did, his 14th through 17th great-grandfathers, 10 knights of the Magna Carta, those 25 quote-unquote robber barons, as our modern-day historians call them, the Templar Knights there, they were regaining their property and liberty and rights the way George Washington, their descendant was 500 plus years later, within the same bloodlines and the same feuds over the same time. And this is all about the resources and valuable resources that are in that these families have controlled here in the Atlantis, or they want to call them new. It's the same place. We just want to, again, it's the propagandized aspects of this. This stuff's always been with these bloodlines. and there's always been a fight for it.
And I want to add something too. In the 1300s, there where history would tell us that these guys were stomped out, I think I forgot to mention this. Some of them went to Portugal, which if you break down that name, it seems like it could mean Port U Grail. I've heard that breakdown. Like some say that Portugal comes from Port of the Grail, like that was the original title.
Sure. No,
But
Portugal, Spain, exactly. They comprise a lot of these places. They
Mhm.
went mobile.
Oh, and so it was 1315. It was a Portuguese prince who sort of revived, if you will, the Templars. I mean, like I said, some of them went all over the place, including came here, but also a Portuguese king decided he was going to start up an order there in Portugal. Well, that's the family that Columbus married into,
Yes,
and
sir.
that's how he got the maps to come over here in the first place.
Precisely. And Columbus, after that marriage,
Eh, eh,
Columbus started using the hooked X in his signature.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I would suggest that the tradition. I think he was the last line, the last of a long line. I'll put it that way. He was the last. Columbus was the last of a long line of Mediterranean seafarers.
Well, don't rule out Hernando del Soto, who was born in the city of the Templar and has that same Templar heritage through Spain. So, again, when we're looking at the dispersion of these events after they were put down
Well, like
officially,
the map. I'm talking about the maps, though, JJ. Like that's DeSoto. I think just did what Columbus did, right? He just got his ideas and his routes from
yeah, but
Columbus.
DeSoto went Lewis and Clark style, sir, all across the South, and he ventured into
Oh yeah,
mounds and giants.
oh, I know, bro. I got the
What
whole
else?
thing
But
right
what
here.
else did he get into? And where did Lewis and Clark get those maps from?
He
You see what I'm
went,
saying?
yeah. DeSoto named Appalachia. Well, he didn't name it, but it was the people in the
That's
region
what
were
I'm
calling it
saying,
that.
dude. That's what I'm saying. And we see these things getting passed down through these same organizational bloodline aspects of these secret organizations. And we see that here. This is the Abbey of New Clairvaux. So when the Mormons, the offshoot of the Society of Cincinnati, and their folks therein, when they started the state of California from the Spanish, they're the Templar aspects therein. We see the folks like Leland Stanford in these bloodlines. And the initial site there on his farmland is today sits a Cistercian order of monks. The Cistercians are who founded the Templar. In the Robin Hood tale, that is Friar Tuck. He's a Cistercian beer brewing monk, right? They're the Trappist monastery monks who make beer. This one, and specifically, brews beer with the local Sierra Nevada brewery out of Chico. But this site, just outside of Chico, they moved a 13th century Knights Templar religious house to this site. And it started by doing Leland Stanford started the process a couple hundred years ago. They finished it more recently, and it's now constructed. It's an 800-year-old meeting house of the Cistercian monastery of Santa Maria de Ovila. And this was I'm sorry, Hearst was also involved in one point in time. Again, it's these are efforts that go over time, but this thing has been constructed now today. I've been there. I've seen it. It's was
Hmm.
originally over in Spain, so at a Templar meeting house over there. So we see them putting these things here. So
Hmm.
these same monks of this same order traversed America to get out west by virtue of going through Cahokia. They're the same lineage of these monks. These same monks are the namesake for Monk's Mound at Cahokia. They lived there on top of Monk's Mound, the largest mound in Cahokia, Illinois,
Yeah,
for 40 years. No, I'm
yeah,
sorry, nearly 40 years.
yeah. Goes back to old maps, man. Like Hugh de Paynes and Godfrey de Saint Omar. They collected old maps from Egypt and I think Phoenicia. And that's part of what they were doing in Constantinople. They were getting these maps together and they were comparing them to get a clearer picture of the lay of the land, literally, on how to better ways to travel over here and stuff like that. And I think that what some of those maps that Hugh de Paynes and Godfrey were looking at, their whole intention was to do with the American lands. And this was in early 1100 AD, like early 1100.
For sure.
So,
And we see Hudip again as the operational headquarters, right? So we see the administrative headquarters of the Knights Templar beginning out of the Council of Claremont, as in Claremont County, Ohio, which is the neighboring county to the city of Cincinnati, the city of the operational headquarters of the Society of the Cincinnati, the new city of Rome, the city of Seven Hills. And one of those seven hills was renamed Eden Park.
Mm.
And it faces to the east because of the turn of the century, last century. There was a convention of men of the cloth of various Protestant and maybe even a couple Catholic guys. I don't remember. They convened to try to decide where was the most probable location of the physical Garden of Eden. And they decided the most probable location was Claremont County, Ohio. So the folks over there in Hamilton County, Cincinnati, renamed one of those hills Eden Park because it faces to the east. But speaking to the resources, the mound and the ancient history thereof, and the Templar interest, so it was a French explorer of Templar ancestry and of these same bloodlines that names it Claremont in the 1600s. So, and the society kept that name, and I think that's important to note. And all those names that reside within this area are very important to note as well. And the fact that the future French king who lived in exile from 1794 till 1830, King Louis Philippe I, the Bourbon Restoration, was hiding out in Claremont County. So we see a lot of these old ancient Templar interests again with these same bloodlines.
Yeah.
In the New World, including moving sites to California through literally the same order of monks that are naming Monk's Mound in the 1600s, and this is Cistercian monks. That's who Bernard de Clairvaux, the Abbey of New Clairvaux there in California, is named after Bernard de Clairvaux, who was the cleric Cistercian monk who forms the Templars at the Council of Claremont. What's also important to note there is the treasurer, his treasurer that he would appoint in these matters, right, to start the Templars there, was the guy who was in charge of the Notre Dame Cathedral. The same one
cathedrals. They built them. Like
precisely.
Yeah.
And
Bernard Clairvaux and some of these early Templars got the contracts to build the masonry contracts to build the Gothic cathedrals all across Spain and France. And that's why you see all these alchemical symbols on the walls of all these cathedrals.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I think that Bernard de Clairvaux was secretly a practicing druid of some sort.
Yes, sir. They all are.
He was right, exactly. And he was best
bloodlines.
friends. He was best friends with the Kabbalistic rabbi dude. So it was all about they were all about the occultic information and the alchemy and everything else. Rosicrucians came out all this later, of course. You know, I mean, it's like
I think you're spot on. I think you're
like
spot on because again, these are just manifestations of the same organizations and bloodlines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, it's funny, man. Like I used to play music with this guy, and his last name was Godfrey. And like I was hanging out with him once, and I asked him about it. I'm like, "So where'd your last name come from?" And he was like, "Well, I have way back in my family, we had knights in my family." And he was like, some of them were said to be Knights Templar. And I was like, I thought it was so dumb when he told me. I'm like, there's no way. Like this guy's just like
Right.
He's one of
Hey
these
man, that
guys.
sounds like National Treasure 3 you're telling me, Tim. Is this what are you writing a movie?
This guy was like had full sleeves of tattoos before it was popular and drove around a muscle car. So I'm thinking Knights Templars in his family. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, his last name was Godfrey for a reason, right? Godfrey de Saint Omar. Maybe
I mean, again, dude,
of the Templars.
You think this is crazy? I know a fella who's a descendant from the first Freemason that came into France. He introduced Freemasonry to France, I think, in the 1720s or so. There, his name was Andrew Ramsay. My dude's also named Andrew Ramsay, and Andrew Ramsay was also famously known to be friends with Sir Isaac Newton and Alexander Pope. You may know those names from the DaVinci Code because these three members were all allegedly part of the Priory of Sion, the secret society that protects the descendants of Jesus and Mary of the Knights Templar descendants. So, you know, if you want to look for evidence of these people getting involved in folks' lives, I'm descendant from documented on at least it seems by all parent documentation 19 of the 25 Magna Carta Knights Templar. As a result of my son in my marriage, there, my son's mother. I mean, he's now descendant of 24 of the 25. It seems. What I'm saying is, it's not surprising to me to find somebody named Andrew Ramsay, descended from the Andrew Ramsay, who's part of the Priory of Sion, allegedly deeply involved in bringing Freemasonry to France. And this man's got a giant fleur-de-lis tattoo across his chest. My friend, that is. You know, it's not surprising me that someone like that would insert himself into my life, considering the facts I would later find out regarding my heritage.
Mm.
You want to look for exhibiting of infinite. I say whenever I talk about any of these matters, like I'm talking about old shit. How's it relevant today? Well, it's how it's relevant today. I have a descendant from the man who's allegedly part of the Priory Scion, who inserts himself into my life very aggressively by he's in the air. We served together. We're in the Air Force, not a cop, but he started becoming friends with all my friends after. This guy, I accepted it. We were friends. We're no longer. I've not associated with him in years. He had a weird response to a lot of things, but one of the first times I met him, we're I call them garbage can dude invasions. My garbage can dudes and I like to go to various areas, and when we party a lot, we also like taking the history, and we're out in Lake Havasu, and I'm obviously it's Lake Havasu. You can do some sun and beach time out there in Arizona, but we're taking some of these more ancient sites out there as well. But dude, we're on the beach. Dude's got I just met the dude, friend of a friend at this point. He's got a big Fleur de Lis tattoo on his chest. So I'm introducing, I'm trying to hook him up with some ladies. I'm married, but I'm obviously going to play wingman for my dudes there. And I'm introducing some ladies there on the beach. And I'm telling him he's the #1 New Orleans Saints fan. And he immediately was getting butthurt about that. And I said, dude, he like pulled me aside later. He's like, it's not the New Orleans Saints. I'm like, dude, it's a joke, dude.
Yeah.
So he immediately gets butthurt and gives me a talking to about how it's the Fleur de Lis and everything else like that. I'm like, all right, dude, well, let's take it down a notch there, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But years later, I put
Well,
it into context.
where did the city of New Orleans get the symbol in the first place, right?
French Society of Cincinnati. There you go. So that's what I'm saying. So these things are relevant still today. If I have a descendant of Andrew Ramsey named Andrew Ramsey who has a giant Fleur de Lis tattoo, the symbol of the Priory Scion, the original Andrew Ramsey was allegedly part of, and those DaVinci tales, right? They were retold. Dan Brown stole those tales.
DaVinci tales. I love that.
That's because everyone writes again. These things are put in movies to discredit them, and Dan Brown stole those ideas from somebody else. He did not develop any of that narrative or storyline. He bastardized it.
Sure.
But again, I think these are real things. I think they are relevant because again, I have evidence in my own life of them being relevant, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you pointed that Templar stuff out to me about the Robert E. Lee stuff, man, I've been so far down the Lee Boys rabbit hole these days. It's crazy. And when you brought that up to me, I was like, dude, are you in my brain hole, Tim? Because and ever since then, I've been even more so down that. But we're talking about these ancient treasures and these bloodlines. What's one of the most infamous tales about the Confederate War? The Civil War there with the Confederate Army.
The gold, right?
The gold.
Yeah.
Right. And look at the two main figures: Robert E. Lee, Society of Cincinnati, his father founding the Lees, one of the signatories of the U.S. Constitution, his grandfather. We also have Jefferson Davis, his father, original member of the Society of Cincinnati. So we're looking at the same bloodlines. We're looking at a division within the Society of Cincinnati, which created the Civil War. The South Carolina chapter quit in April of 1860. It's by no coincidence that the war starts in April of 1861 in Charleston, South Carolina. So we see all these things matter.
An ancient star fort, nonetheless.
There you go.
Charleston,
because they're taking up shop in their ancestors, right? And same as like Fort Ticonderoga.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you about next. Actually, Fort Ticonderoga.
Love that place. I got some interesting thoughts on that place.
Well, let's shift to that region of the country because I was on a live with you. I was on your show, and
I was probably there.
We start talking about that St. Lawrence River and how these guys were coming down the St. Lawrence River, and they were coming down and branching off on the Richelieu River? There's a river off the St. Lawrence that comes down into New York State. I think it's called the Richelieu.
I don't remember the name of it. I'm looking it up right now, sir.
Well,
that sounds right, though.
That's the river that used to connect to the Hudson River, I think. Right. But anyway, there's Scott Welter has this old document. They're called the Cremona document. Because it comes out of Cremona, Italy, it describes a place off the Richelieu River called the Temple of the Goddess. Right? There was an old ancient temple over here up in the Catskills. Some of those documents say
you are correct, sir. Richelieu River. You are correct, sir.
Yes. Some of those documents,
also known as the Chambly River, though, when it was the British.
Okay, Chambly. All right. Well, the fort.
The whole French and British thing at Quebec.
Yeah. So some of those documents also say to go to Fort Hunter on the Mohawk River. And it's in this New York area, right? The Mohawk River. I looked that up and it's still there. Fort Hunter is still there, and it's at the confluence of two rivers. So I guarantee you that's another one of the places they were using. Because
Yeah,
and I
dude.
want to tie this in with something you said about that Confederate treasure.
I'm tracking, sir. I'm following along here. I'm looking at some pictures and typing things in as you go.
I think that these treasures, they have what they called vaults. They had several vaults. They still apparently do. Templars have these vaults where they have stuff stored, whether it's treasure or scrolls and ancient knowledge and all the above. And Oak Island seems to have been one of those places, and it may have been there as a future treasury for the beginning of the country. But what I'm saying is, regardless of what it was and what it was intended to be, it seems like when Benjamin Franklin went in there and got some of that money, um, and these other guys did after him, it seems like they moved that stuff around. They didn't just take it all and spend it. I think part of the practice is like you use a location like that for as long as you can use it, and then you move the treasure, take what you need for your purposes, and then create a new area to hide stuff. And I'm thinking that maybe, just maybe, that this is what this area of upstate New York became, one of these areas where they were hiding things. Um, because it's right that the Fort Hunter is right up the river from a place called New Amsterdam, or called Amsterdam. And the Templars were using New Amsterdam as a title for their ciphers, as a keyword in their ciphers.
Yes,
So,
sir.
and it's like, could it be that they founded New Amsterdam in the first place, right? New Amsterdam was New York City before it's called New York City. So,
Well, let's look who did that. The Van Schulers, the Van Cortlands, right? The Society of the Cincinnati Families of the New York chapter, right?
yeah.
The
So,
Livingstons.
mhm.
It's the Scottish ones that went through with they joined up with the Dutch. So we see before these times the same families teaming up with these same national borders that are described, but they're the same bloodlines. The Livingstons, the Van Cortlands, the Van Schulers, so on and so forth, the Van Rensselaers, mine, the Vanderpools. I'm a Vanderpool. They're linked in with the Vances. That's part of one of my four Abner Vances is his granddaughter married a Vanderpool, and that's where I come through that one. Anyhow, my point being here is we see not only the Scots Irish, the Vances and the Vanderpools, we see the Vanderpools, the Livingstons, the Van Schulers, the Van Rensselaers, and so on and so forth of the New Amsterdam founding families teaming up with the Livingstons, who were a Scottish family beforehand. So, and they're one of the other New York chapter families, the Livingstons.
And the Sinclairs helping to establish these
They
vaults over here in the
they
first
were the
place.
Pennsylvania. They came through they're predominantly through the Pennsylvania chapter, like General Arthur St. Clair.
So, anyway, a
No, what
couple
you're
of
saying
things.
spot on, sir. I
Yeah,
think you're
no,
spot on.
yeah, a couple of things I just want to highlight though is like they had places over here set up, and going back into this goddess worship thing, they literally had a place over here on top of a mountain called the Temple of the Goddess,
I just saw that. That's amazing. I did not know that either.
which apparently they were storing scrolls there of books from biblical times. Um, and I'm very interested in this part of the story, which they're saying that they have this book called the Book of the Wars of the Lord, and that it's a book that's mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in Numbers. They're saying that they have that book, and it was part of a collection that was stored at this temple. So, and we're not talking about these guys aren't Christians, by the way, but they tend to deal with areas of the faith occasionally. Like they brush paths and collect Christian documents for some reason, but they don't seem like they want to follow the narrative of the Bible. They kind of want to stray off and follow their own narratives on things, but nonetheless, they might actually have some of these old texts that are mentioned in the Bible. I don't know, but who knows, right? My point is, there's a lot going on up and down these waterways,
Well,
right?
no, I think that's part of this. No, when we were talking about treasures, part of that treasure is most certainly texts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Old
So we're talking
knowledge.
about caches of things as well. We're talking about
Yes, sir.
treasures buried in mounds and around these areas. We're talking about I'll give you a few examples. So during the Civil War, the Society of the Cincinnati feud that we now know as the Civil War, we have two of these members of prominent members of these families, General Stonewall Jackson and General, we'll call him Phil McPhilson because I can't remember his name right now. They run simultaneous campaigns raiding northern towns in the Union, one through Pennsylvania, the other through Indiana, and right through Union headquarters in Cincinnati, all the way to northern Ohio. They're raiding Masonic lodges that were built upon mound sites. I suspect many of those sites, again, were caches of these sort of treasures we're discussing in a network of caches that were established and mapped out as in a dispersion of their treasures. Over
Yes.
multiple dispersions over multiple times over history, they've done this. But
Does Fort
and they go to.
Ticonderoga fit into this?
Well, I'll get right back up there on this tail here, sir. So we see that in the Civil War, where these campaigns of these two generals that were descendants of these same bloodlines and members of the Society of the Cincinnati. We go back to the Society of the Cincinnati campaign at Fort Ticonderoga, which predates the American interest there with the French. So the French side of the same bloodline, Society of Cincinnati business, occupied and allegedly built that fort beforehand. But again, I would argue this is an ancestral site for them, and we see them protecting matters in a very similar kind of occult manner when we see a wizard. We were talking about wizard stuff earlier. I think these things go on to modern times as well here with these sites. With Ben Franklin, he was an honorary member of the Society of Cincinnati, meaning he didn't pass on his membership, but he's also up there during one of the most integral battles there, Fort Ticonderoga there in the war, and he's doing, I would argue, wizard shit. And these are sites that they're protecting these sites because there are treasures there at those sites.
Yes,
they put stuff there because they're protecting the treasure.
Yeah, and the fort, that the ruins of the fort or whatever, the fort that's there today, they may have built that right on top of an older fort, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Like,
100%. Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing is like these are these ancestral locations, right? Like they've been using these locations since antiquity.
Well, we do the same thing now, right? So I'm living on a farm here. I stay on my dude's farm here, and I help cake. I'm more of a land caretaker at times because no one resides on the farm, but it's an operational farm from generations. The generations of my
Yeah.
dude's family here, they built homes down the way across, on other areas of the property, right, miles away.
Yeah.
So no one's here on the operational side, but there's two old farmhouses here. Well, why is there two old farmhouses here? Because they built upon the ancestral home of their previous ancestors.
Right.
They build forts upon them.
It's the same
folks.
thing.
Folks look at things too complex. I try to make it real simple. The greatest common denominator, human behavior is the same across the spectrum.
Yeah, yes, I know. And the star forts are a huge part of the story. I definitely want to highlight that. I want to underline that. And
But the people who built the star forts had a great understanding of astronomy and mathematics, right?
Yes.
So we're seeing the same salient characteristics to the same bloodlines using the same geographical locations. That's what I mean. They're ancestral homes, if you will.
So
forts or homes or residences, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and we've got this region. I never hear it talked about in regards to ancient history, and it's New York. It's Nova Scotia, Quebec, New York State type of a place, and like so they're coming down. They're coming across the Atlantic Ocean. They're entering in the St. Lawrence River. They're coming down, and then you hang a left on the Richelieu River, and there's a temple. They had a temple up there where they were hiding stuff, being ran by priestesses, and they called it the temple of the goddess. So we're getting into this exotic stuff, and then also in this area we have these star forts, and star forts go back to the mysterious history of North America that we aren't told. And like I said, I do think that some of these locations have been used since antiquity. And I want to talk about another area over here, because now we're also talking about Lake Champlain, right? Lake Champlain is part of this waterway now. I think if you go down the Richelieu River, it takes you right into Lake Champlain. I'll have to, right?
Absolutely, sir. You know your geography well. I'm a bootleg Vermonter, Lake Champlain. I've fished, swam, and done all sorts of boating across most of my life.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with the regions.
So let's show. This is another site. Let's show people this site here that's in this region. Now, if I showed somebody this picture and asked them where it was, I imagine that they would probably say Scotland or something, right? This is here.
It looks very reminiscent of a scene from Scotland.
Yes. This is Crown Point historic site off of Lake Champlain.
Yep. A lot of history up there. A lot of
Yes.
it. When you're talking about buried treasure, sir, I spent a good amount of my teenage years in Vermont, looking for buried. I know this is going to sound real Mormon of me, because I was Mormon at the time. Looking for buried treasure through tales I heard about and read about through folklore in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. Now, one more thing about this. A listener sent me this, by the way. Shout out to them. They were up here. They were, exploring this area. They're like, "Have you ever heard of this?" I'm like, "No," but it turns out it's right in this area that I'm researching, so it was perfect timing. Now, look what this sits inside of. Okay, so these are two buildings that we're seeing here, right? Two old ruins off of Lake Champlain. Now,
Yup.
we're going to zoom out. I'm going to show you what this looks like from the air. Bam! Star Fort.
Yup.
Look
Right
at
in your
that.
face hole.
Look at that.
I've been there, sir. It's no different. It looks no different than Fort Ticonderoga nearby.
Right. What is really going on with these lands, man? What is really going on here?
It's a fantastic question, and you are correct. There is a lot of history in that region that is ignored.
Mm.
Lots of it. It's a lot of unknown territory. The Adirondack National Park, sir. I've been on Boy Scout adventures there. Went on a canoeing trip there in the Boy Scouts one time. In my Boy Scout years. Pardon me. That is a larger national park than the Rocky Mountain National Park, and it is far less inhabited.
Mm-hmm.
That's the region immediately to the west of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, man. I just think
What
it's
what are in them hills? You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. How long have these forts been here? And are they tied in with the Templars? Are they tied in with some of these older, or are they tied in to the people who came before the Templars who were in the Middle Eastern orders? All that stuff, man. I mean, these star forts, every one of them I've looked into goes back way before the date that they tell us. Like I've told you about Fort Pitt in Pittsburgh. They say that it was built in the 1700s, and I don't have the details fresh in my mind, but I looked into it. There are three other forts before Fort Pitt that I could find documented that, and some of them predate what Wikipedia says is the founding date and the building date, built by date. Like these things just go back. There's no origin story for Fort Pitt at the tip of Pittsburgh.
Say what? Really?
Yeah, it just goes back older and older and older to older times.
I mean,
Nobody
I'm
knows
not
how
too
to do this.
surprised because again, we're talking about another place that was maintained by what would become the French side of the French chapter, right? Those bloodlines, and they're the ones who maintain this Fort Pitt and nearby Fort Le Boeuf,
Mhm.
and they're
So
both Star Fort style, right?
yeah, it's a star fort. Fort Pitt is 100% a star fort. And like I got this book here. You can't, it's too dark to see, but it's Atlantis, Empire of the Gods in North America. It's an interesting book. It's not as woo-woo as it sounds. And it's Henriette Mertz who wrote this. She's passed, but she in this book she alludes to these inscribed stones that were found in Maine and Quebec that show that the people from Carthage were here. Carthaginians, however you say that. I can't even remember how to pronounce that. Carthaginians?
The the Carthaginians.
The Carthaginians?
Carth-
I think that's it.
I think it's a silent C. It's the Arthenians.
But anyway, so I'm trying to look into that too, because it's like, wow, there was another group that was over here that she seemed to know about, and some
Dude, there's Asian folks. There's evidence of Asian stuff over here too.
yeah. But it's Quebec is kind of tied in with this whole area of that we're looking at. So
You are
yeah,
correct, sir,
okay.
and that's my next point. So we're
Oh,
talking about the waterways of the area. We're talking about entrances into America. It's not just Lake Champlain. From Quebec's there is. Let me share this with you here real quick.
mhm.
Because again, this is an area I know this region real well. But before I do that, let me share this with you real quick though. Fort Le Boeuf. It's my understanding this was the French folks there before Fort Pitt. This was their fort. Again, you're going to see the same star forts nearby Fort Pitt. This is the same family. This is a prominent member of the French chapter. George Washington would meet with this member who starts this fort, allegedly the little booth guy, to plot the assassination of General Braddock. This is when George is a colonel in the British Army.
Mm-hmm.
This is the red sash he would famously wear in following the Braddock ambush. Now, again, we call it the Braddock ambush. This is what I would say put George on treason list number one, because he survives, all of his men survive, and his boss, the man that was sent over to the colonies to put him in order, he dies. And then George runs around with his red sash the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but that right before that, George was put on notice to go do some dealings and negotiations with the French up here at Fort Le Boeuf, because this is the French Indian War versus the Brits at the time. Well, I would say that what George was really doing was colluding with the future same folks at the French chapter they would work with later in assassinating the British commander of America, George's boss. But that happens at a Star Fort.
Yeah.
That meeting did.
So yeah, this is a similar, I guess, because I think Washington was involved with Fort Pitt at some point too. But what it is now, I'm thinking about it, is it was Fort Duquesne.
Fort Duquesne. There you go. Yes, I agree
Right.
with you on that one, sir. Yep.
So
But it's not same deal, though,
listen,
right? Star Fort.
it's a Star Fort. They built that one in 17. They say they built Fort Duquesne in 1754, but if you do some digging, there's documentation of an older fort there called Fort Prince George. Okay, then if you do more digging, they say, oh, well, there was a Fort Trent there before that. So it just keeps going back. It doesn't have an origin story. It's as if it's always been there. But they say the French came in 1754 and built Fort Duquesne. And they list no date for Fort Prince George or Fort Trent or any. It doesn't matter to them because they choose to start the story in 1754. That's what I'm saying with that's the deal with these star forts. Every one I've looked into has some sort of a shady past that points to it being there, like Castle Clinton at the tip of Manhattan. Looks a lot like Fort Pitt. It's at the same kind of a geographical kind of a location. That's been there for a long time too, and it's shady, shadowy origins, man. It's on. I saw it on old maps from the 1600s. It's like, really, you guys say this was built in the 1800s? What's it doing on a map from the 1600s? So they're all like that I've looked
I
into.
agree with you. I think and again, I think it's passed down through these bloodlines, and that's why we see folks like George Washington dispatching Joseph Vance Sr., the would-be first cousin of Abner Vance. They were biological cousins, and that is on paper, to Fort Vance, right? And then we see the first free city in America right near these star forts we're describing, with Duquesne, Fort Pitt, and Fort Le Boeuf, right downriver to Washington, PA, right here. And that's the first free city in America, founded by, again, started by these Vance folks up here from Fort Vance in September of 1783 after the Treaty of Paris. So this is a city and a university that every U.S. president's visited. So this is a very interesting. Again, I like to bring things to relevant times. This is a very relevant story, and it revolves around the areas of this. Again, I would say the same ancestral areas where these star forts are. They're setting up the first free city in America.
Hmm. I've got a very interesting story. It's a news article about giant bones that were found down there in Washington, PA. So there was,
Yeah,
there was a mound site. There were giants found there,
Fort Vance was a mound site.
right? So, like,
Fort Loudon, where George found them giants, sir. That was a mound site.
mhm.
Please continue, though. I apologize for interjecting there.
No, just saying,
I
like,
get excited when you talk about mounds and giants,
I
though.
know,
So
man. Me too. It just it goes back to some of the things that we've pointed out already on this program before today, to do with these places being, I like your term there, like ancestral heritage sites,
sure,
places where people have been living for a very long time, and not just living. You mentioned DeSoto earlier. DeSoto did indeed go up into the South, into Appalachia, and some of that's mentioned in this book I just talked about. I've read about it in other books too, but DeSoto, what he did was, the further up he went, once he got into Tennessee, he finds that there's cities there. There's a civilization there, not teepees and fires, cities. They had built up on these islands in the Little Tennessee River. and they had the Chota, the Cherokee metropolis there. So, and he stayed there. DeSoto liked it there. He's like, and this is like a paradise. He's like, they're growing corn, beans, and squash, and this place is great. They're civilized people. And when you look into some of those sites, that's when you start to find like the Egyptian temple of Norris Dam. It's underneath Norris Lake right now because they covered it up. It's an ancient site that predates the Cherokees' residence in the region. The Cherokee moved into a place where people had been living before. These cities have been cities for a very long time. And when I see that there are giant bones being found in mounds and temple complexes where Washington, Pennsylvania is today, a light goes off and I think, oh, George Washington knew about this place and wanted to he wanted to rebrand it with his name on it. This is a place where people
I
have
think you're
been
spot
living
on,
for a
sir.
long time.
I think you're spot on, sir. We live under propagandized narratives of fairy tales and nursery rhymes and bedtime tales of history and all of these folks are being sanctioned. Their families are being sanctioned. Their narratives around those families are being sanctioned. Their true histories have been sanctioned.
Yeah. I mean, oh, there's another one. I'm just going to show it. I was going to wait for another program, but I mean, I got something that's just going to prove the point. I think even more. Let me show you this real quick. It's not that. Hold on a second.
While you're looking for that, may I share this on the nature of that area of Quebec, southern Quebec, into America, and the ways to sneak in there? This area was a choke point, if you will, and a secret area for many years in which to get in via a river system and a mountain pass.
Okay.
This is now known as Stowe, Vermont, but Smuggler's Notch is the mountain pass there at Mount Mansfield,
Yeah, go
and
ahead
there
and
are
share it.
so many legends. What's that, sir?
Go ahead and share it if you want.
Oh, is it not sharing? Oh, my apologies.
No, I don't see it.
I'm new and I don't know what to do. Hold on one second.
Is that it?
Is that it?
I think we
What's
got
that
it
do?
up there now. There
What's
you
that
go.
do? Yeah. So I just want to point out that when we're looking at matter, so you see Lake Champlain right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is over here, and it actually connects from a waterway over here in Quebec. See, and you come down that waterway over through the mountain pass, and that dumps into. And you don't see that a good picture on this Wikipedia page of the waterway I'm describing, but it does go through that mountain pass and then down in through here and down into Lake Champlain. So there's some sneaky ways to get in there, and there's many tales of this, as you can see here in the history of Smuggler's Notch, about all the kind of the efforts of smuggling through things through there. That's how it got its name over the years. But there's a lot of legends of things being hidden in there that no one's ever found. So that's when I was describing the treasures I look for in matters we were discussing. This is exactly what I was referring to. Is a lot of history there folks don't know about.
Yeah, man. It's all over North America. It's all over. And you know what, man? Something just went off, man. Something just clicked. That's the Washington, PA, right? Like that was his little city, right? Washington established it.
He called it. He called them Vance boys. He said, "Let's start a new city in America."
He said, "Let's start this city. We're going to call it Washington, PA." It just went off in my head. That's the connection point for this ancient bloodline meeting for Washington reconnecting with this ancient bloodline because there was giants buried there. There were giants living there. It was an ancient civilization, and Washington reconnected with it. Is that this bloodline reconnecting with itself essentially?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'll give you one further nearby in the caves and cliff dwellings nearby, Washington, PA, are 15,000-year-old inscriptions and cave drawings. Some of the oldest we have in America. So we see these again. These are the folks that are drawing, as you're saying, they're connecting to their heritage in the same sites and locations, whether it's a star fort, whether it's farmland, multi-generational farmlands. The farm I'm on right now was in this family, my dude's family, from the Revolutionary War and them land grants. So that's what I'm saying. Whether it's ancestral lands that were in America, whether it's the star forts, the cave arts, the mounds, the giants, these are things that some folks know about here, and they've been building stuff on top of it and paying I call it paying tribute. You got to pay tribute. This is their versions of paying tribute and homage and some sort of honor to these things. But
It's like the
looking at through Clan
Temecula tribe.
Vance, go ahead, sir.
It's like that Temecula tribe down in Georgia, right? Where there were giants in called the Temecula's down in Georgia on Jekyll Island, and they had a temple there, and they had an altar there, and this is known, it was documented, and Rockefeller went in there and built a house right on top of the temple, and that's where they had the meeting to establish the Federal Reserve.
I was going to mention that earlier. I'm glad you brought that back. Yes, sir. And we see a lot of other elements of that anti-liberty faction of the Society of Cincinnati erupting out of that event and the parties involved.
But they
But
connected. They
it,
connected with the older bloodline.
they did. And yeah, they did on the Rockefeller's cottage there on Jekyll Island on a mound. And even you look
Yeah.
at so there's evidence of the excavation of that mound. However, and you will see folks today, there are narratives online, including the official, I believe, commerce or travel folks down there's narratives. That's not a real mound. You know, there's no evidence of it. It's just you know, a bunch of seashells. You know, and again, there's back in the 30s and 20s, there's numerous excavations of those sites before the well, I know I guess it would have been 1890s, 1910s. It was before the Federal Reserve creation there, before the Rockefellers bought that property.
Yeah, yeah. You've got these cultures that, you know, I mean, I don't know.
My point being there is you can see both sides of the same coin and the factions within these groups that are using the sites. So you see the anti-liberty faction of the Society of Cincinnati that connects up to that Tammany Hall group versus also you have the Tammany Hall group that Aaron Burr founded. That Aaron Burr founded, who murdered Alexander Hamilton in the first public dispute of the Society of Cincinnati, murdering the Society of Cincinnati President General. This is 5 years after, 4.5, well, almost 5 years to the date, to be quite honest with you. After George Washington was poisoned, the first President General of the Society on July 4, 1799, Aaron Burr and his coup of America, backed by those European interests, those globalist interests, in a tale as old as Jesus, in the time of Judea and the King Herod, who sold out his people to the globalist interests of Judea, so the Roman interests. We see that going on here too, with Aaron Burr being backed by the Vatican. We see the coup against Lincoln being backed by the Vatican, with John Surratt literally being hidden out by the Vatican, and all the members who are involved in this conspiracy happen to be from the Maryland colony of the Vatican. So that should be of note. Again, it's the same pattern of behavior over time within these same groups and the liberty and anti-liberty factions that dispute these things. But these are all mound-related issues of their ancestral ritual and resident sites here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And it's not just North America either. I mean, speaking of the Templars have these sites all over Spain. You know, I think in that Pyrenees mountain, there's a lot of Cathar stuff there and Templar stuff as well. But they had access. The thing about this group is that they have access to like a hidden library of records, right? And if you look, it gets real interesting when you look into some of these guys who claim to be Templars, like Mitch Hedges. You know, he said that the Templars at Rennes Chateau had a gathering where all these Templars would get together and they'd bring out this crystal skull, right? And that they would have some sort of a ceremony and that they would see visions and that they would receive information. From the crystal skull, so like Joseph Smith style, right? Like the whole Joseph Smith story where he puts the seeing stones in the hat and he looks down in the hat and he blocks out all the light and it's almost like he's like looking at a little mini computer screen in there and he's getting all this information from these rocks. That's what they said was happening here. And this is a guy who says he was a Templar, and he actually got really into the crystal skulls and said that he found one in the Americas, and that it was a Mayan divination relic. So, and it's a wild story, but I just
Well,
bring
it
it up
makes you wonder
because
where the Templars, sir. Makes you wonder, if I may, sir.
that's where you get the crystal skull in Indiana Jones, right? It's like these guys were really messing around with these crystal skulls.
Well, yeah, but it makes you wonder where they get the whole worship of skulls, right? I mean, again, there's a lot to be said about the tomfoolery and propaganda. And again, I'm not trying to diminish the departed of this world, but I had problems with her on her research and statements, Tracy Twyman, regarding the Knights Templar. Again, I think these are efforts to diminish, some, again, there's ongoing efforts. There's ongoing efforts to all these things to attack both of these, from we'll call it the goddess worship versus the paternal, order aspects of the Romans, whatnot. There's ongoing matters of this nature. And again, I think some of this propaganda is largely focused in that, with diminishing the Templars and whatnot, and not least of which their history in America, but any idea that they brought anything good into this world. Again, we have rights. Those rights of the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, it's thanks to the Knights Templar. So folks don't want to, I told her, you want to diminish the Knights Templar all day long, ma'am. You can do so at your own cost of being able to do so because of the Knights Templar. I told her to consider that. We had a respectful disputes on the matter, but nonetheless, people quote that her stuff to me all the time. Like, yeah, I'm like, that's garbage. So, and I'm a garbage can dude, and I'm going to call that garbage. But nonetheless, we see the same thing. That Notre Dame Cathedral goes back to the Council of Clermont and the creation of the Templars. The current you mentioned Rothschild before. I thought that was interesting, Tim. The current Rothschild, first lady, first husband, father of the president there, Mrs. Macron, as they call her. She's a man/father to Emmanuel Macron, it seems. They're both Rothschilds of the Trogneau family. This has been well documented. This is not suppositions. This is a journalist over there who's in hiding now, Xavier Rousseau. This is all very pertinent because, again, this ties into the French chapter of the society. These banners do back all the way to the Templars. So that man lady who calls herself the first lady, whose son/husband are both secret Rothschilds of this Trogneau chocolate family, she wanted to put not a giant statue, sir, a giant golden penis with balls, complete with sack, on top as the new spire of the Notre Dame Cathedral. The same Notre Dame Cathedral that a number of Society of Cincinnati members, or at least descendants thereof of the Templar, including Trump, were in attendance of the reopening of, not the least of which Boris Johnson. Back to that Norman invasion of the UK. There's been some shit coating on his heritage, but I did it years ago. He is a descendant from one of those knights, lieutenants of William the Conqueror on that same invasion.
It's interesting. I'm convinced that he was brought in as prime minister just to be active during the 2020 COVID stuff. They used him for something.
To tank the British Empire. The same thing I think Meghan Markle's been done a great job of. There's a lot of Americans that are tanking shit in that British Empire these days, and I like it. But nonetheless, we see also Donald Trump during the time of Boris Johnson PM. He went over there and he decided he was going to go walk in front of the Queen on her own property on Friday, July 13th. 2018. Made a big spectacle. They said Donald Trump on this unofficial state visit would have the audacity to walk in front of the Queen. Well, he did so, and then he visits the Templar headquarters there in London, and then he has a weird meeting on a mound in Scotland on one of his golf courses. Because if you think about it, Donald Trump's the largest mound owner in the world. Because all these golf courses he's built upon are all mound sites, including the UK. And if I may emphasize my point there with, we call these mounds, they call them tumuli, you can call them barrows. They're all the same constructions of the same culture, of the same bloodlines. And when I see a man who's a MacLeod his mother's MacLeod of a Templar heritage there with Donald Trump, I'm going to ask, why is he buying up so many mound sites?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you look here, we can see here on the mounds in the UK, they are fundamentally, in every aspect of appearance and construction and time in which they're allegedly built, no different than what we see today. And that is, let me see if I can bring up the right picture here. I was looking for it for a moment here. Well, let me bring up this picture. So we see over there, these Knights Templar families built their castles on mounds. And this is not the only example of that, but this is one example. So this is a Templar castle that was built upon a mound site in Wales. Back to that Beaker people. The rocks of Stonehenge come allegedly from Wales, but again, that whole region down there in southern United Kingdom, my ancestry, according to all DNA results, comes from the mound culture that built those mounds. So my paternal bloodline, that is. So we see again emphasized through these same paternal bloodlines, right? Through a different. This is not mine. This is one of the. I'll get back to you which one this was. Oh, here we go. Land. Don't ask me to pronounce anything Welsh, sir. I will not do that. But it's right there. You can see it. This is a Templar castle that was built in the 13th century, and it was built upon a mound site. It's recognized mound site over there. We have a lot of recognized mound sites over there. So there's a site. Well, let me just bring this up.
All right, I got
let me find
all
a
right,
picture real quick.
here, let me show something in the meantime. That speaking of building stuff on mound sites, this is the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They built downtown on a mound site.
Yes, sir.
And as you can see, some of the mounds still exist to this day. They're not as plentiful as they once were. I think there's like 7 or 8 of them here, but the rest of them, because there were 60 at one point, the rest of them are underneath the downtown area. They built the city on the mound site.
That goes without saying with the Society of Cincinnati from Cincinnati to all these cities in
Yes.
Michigan to
Yes.
the city of Chicago and so St. Louis, Louisville, so on and so forth. La Crosse,
Yes.
Wisconsin, Minneapolis, St. Paul. These are all mound sites, and they were intentionally done so with the key architecture being built on mound sites. For example, the man who built Fort Vance that I mentioned before, there in Washington, Pennsylvania, there, the man who helped found that city there, Joseph Vance Sr. His son, Joseph Vance Jr., his father was a Pennsylvania chapter. Joseph Vance Sr.'s father, Samuel, Pennsylvania chapter. So he was probably a hereditary member. And then his son was probably a hereditary member, right? So we see again, Joseph Vance Jr., 13th governor of Ohio. He moves the capital from Chillicothe, the kind of the capital of Adena Mounds there, you will. I'll show you a Hopewell Adena structure from Chillicothe. It looks identical to a structure in the United Kingdom here in a moment. But Joseph Vance Jr. moves the capital to Columbus, Ohio, where it is today. They put it on a mound site. They took the contents of that mound, did a ritual, made the cornerstone for the Capitol building in Columbus from the earth mound that they destroyed, and did it in a ritual fashion. And then Joseph Smith Jr., after he got out of office as governor, founded the city of Findlay, Ohio, which is not far from where you're describing this city today in Michigan, about an hour and a half south of there, 2 hours. Founded Findlay on a mound. So we see again the ongoing trend there.
Yeah, and with Grand Rapids here, I looked into a little bit. Very interesting story here. There's documentation of the guys who helped build the city. They were some Irish fellows and some fellows from Holland that were tasked with getting rid of the mounds, right? The other mounds that we don't see here. They were charged with, leveling the mounds, and a lot of those guys quit. They didn't want to go through with it because of the amount of bones and just history that they were pulling out. They thought it was wrong and they got superstitious about it. So they had to send a lot of these guys to work on other streets. You know what I mean? Like they're like, okay, you can work, go down the street where there's no mounds, and we'll have you work on that street. It's just there's a lot of other interesting stories surrounding this one, but I thought I'd bring it up, right? Like this is just another example of something that we've talked about.
For sure, dude. That's a good example, actually.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I'm
mean,
tracking.
the more I look into this, the more I find that our North American cities are built on these mountain sites, man. It's unbelievable. It's
Well,
crazy.
and intentionally, it's they're venerating their ancestry. It's their ancestral ritual and residences.
Seems to be, and then you find out that they're putting in these obelisks and lining them up with the star forts, and there's astrology and astronomy involved, and goddess worship and everything else. This is the wildest story I've ever seen. It's so
I don't
big.
disagree, sir.
It's
I don't
so
disagree. And
big.
if I didn't live it myself, sometimes I'm not sure if I'd believe it.
I know, man. It's
That's
so big
not
that
the image I was looking for. Please stand by.
I don't even
Right.
know how to. I don't even know how to go about doing like a show like we did today. I just don't even really know where to start because the story is so big. There's so
Right.
much to this. Yeah.
I've been on this journey for 9+ years, sir, and I can't agree with you more. It's hard to wrap my own brain hole around to describe to others what I'm experiencing and seeing.
And I definitely knew today, like, let's try to focus on the Templars some because of their part of the story, right? Because this is where it gets very interesting. Like the Templars say that they knew about this land, the New World, from multiple sources. They say that
Plutarch.
the Vikings, yes, of course, Plutarch and the Greeks, the Vikings, but also they got a hold of some Egyptian records and some Jewish records, right? So, and this is another tangent that I won't go fully down, but
Well,
you
no,
had
I like where your
Joseph.
brain holds that, sir.
You
If
had
I may, real
Joseph.
quick,
You had
talking about
Joseph.
ethnic groups of the same bloodline, though, right? Just to put a quick, book note. You're describing these different ethnic groups that knew these maps, that had this knowledge. They're just the same bloodlines that go through these cultures.
Some of them, yes. I'm with you for the most part. Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's going on. I don't deny that. Yeah.
I just think we get lost in definitions. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. Your train of thought. We get lost in definitions of saying it's the thems or the that's or the these, but it's the knowledge of these, it's passed down to these bloodlines.
It is that. It is that. And again, these groups from the Middle East, Egypt, right? There's that mysterious island in Egypt, Elephantine Island. Um, the walls of a temple on that island have depictions of Egyptians trading with Mayans, trading beads with Mayans. So it's like, okay, so how long were the Egyptians coming over here, right? And the Mayans, by the way, weren't just in South America; they were in North America as well. And then there's also these Zohar texts and these other Jewish texts that there, and various records of the Jews that were found, that early groups of Jews were coming over here as well. So, you know, which is probably how you get Indian tribes like the Choctaw, which that's a Hebrew word for Chokmah. Chokmah is the Zohar word for wisdom, or it's just Hebrew for wisdom. Actually, it's not just the Zohar. And Chokmah's tied in with Binah and the Tree of Life and all this very deeply Hebrew theological stuff, right? It's a deeply Hebrew theological concept for Native Americans to know about. It's like, how do they know about this enough to where they named themselves wisdom
Right.
in Hebrew? It's like, so I think the Hebrew, and like I just think that maybe I'm not a lost tribes guy, I guess, or whatever. But I think that some of the lost tribes may have come over here. At some point there were lost tribes and they did disperse across the world, it seems. So maybe some of them came over here. There's
Well,
also,
we have evidence of it. We getting in. I mean, I understand what you're saying because again,
yeah,
we live under these propagandized. The fundamental aspect of the history that you learn, the history that I learned, the history the folks of the interwebs learn is all this is false. What we're saying. So I understand what your perspective is, but it's what I'm saying. If you look at all the evidence, though, the evidence screams otherwise. It screams that there has been a diaspora of varying refugees to this land for many many years. That is the Atlantis, the
yeah,
land in which you're not going to get murked for your belief systems.
yeah.
Essentially, right?
The Wild West, maybe that's it. And also the Vikings. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit, but the
Same
Templars.
family, sir. Same families.
That's where I lean into the bloodline thing, and I don't discount this whole bloodline thing at all. I'm just saying I think there were some other groups that came over here that weren't necessarily a part of the bloodline, but it seems like the bloodline families were the ones that were running stuff at the end of the day. They were the ones who decided where the cities would be, and they're the ones who created the
I,
empires.
I can help you out with that one. So the president of the Senate of the Massachusetts State Senate a couple decades ago, for many decades, Bill Barger, brother of Whitey, Bill Bulger, brother of Whitey Bulger, the infamous Irish mobster who murked a lot of people, worked with the FBI, and was MK Ultra.
Yeah, and
Right
had a Johnny Depp movie made about him.
there, you go. Right, got to got to brag about your tales of your tomfoolery and hood rat shit, but. Bill Bolger, the president of the Senate, was not happy when the governor of Massachusetts decided he was going to make a surprise appearance that day on the Senate floor. That man was a weld of the Society of the Cincinnati Weld family. It served as the headquarters for the Massachusetts chapter in Weld Hill, there in Brookline. Eliezer Weld, Colonel Eliezer Weld, was the head of that aspect of it. But Bill Weld, recent libertarian candidate for president in 2016, I believe, vice president candidate, he was the governor. And Bill Bolger's raising a bunch of ruckus, talking shit, and is making public statements there on the floor and says, my family's been here since the Mayflower, yada yada yada. We blawed this, we blawed that, and then Weld just stands up and says, "Yeah, bud, we sent our help here first." So that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, yeah.
There are elements of the bloodlines, but then there's they got the help.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have this up on the screen for a reason?
Yeah, so that
Okay.
SHILAJIT, when we're talking again, folks get lost in semantics, the definitions of ethnic groups, cultures, or whatever. But again, these bloodlines manifest through various cultures. So,
Yeah, indeed.
well, I look at patterns of behavior and the architecture therein, and we look at this thing. They call them the Six Hills, or a collection of Roman barrows. Some folks call them barrows or tumuli. And you were talking about the Vikings. So the Vikings built barrows and burial mounds dating back to the Viking eras before they became Normans. They're in Normandy when they became Christianized in the 11th century. But one of those mounds, one that I found very interesting of those Viking era mounds that looked not all this similar to what we're looking at in this picture right here. They found a demonic little Mickey Mouse looking character in it, and I argue that is what folks worship when they're worshiping Mickey Mouse, is this little demonic demon that used to be worshipped in a pagan past and was very much venerated with a little ritual trinket buried in a mound, which is we see no different than the ritual trinkets buried in the mounds here in America. So what I'm saying is just applying the known knowns to the what folks don't want to identify here. But these mounds look identical. They call them Roman barrows, right? And now in Chillicothe, Ohio, the epicenter of those Adena mounds today, right? If you were to look at the mounds, we have platform mounds, we have effigy mounds, but the Adena or the Hopewell, which are just ridiculous names we apply to these groups, they didn't call themselves that. They look identical in their constructions, other than they try to claim some carbon dating differentiates the two, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, a lot of Venus alignments here, sir, with these mounds as well.
Yeah.
So we see again that ongoing pattern of behavior. It's not just the names of the ethnic groups and cultures; it's the patterns of their rituals, and their architecture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this site here in Chillicothe looks no different than those Six Hills of the barrows. And again, you have I couldn't find a better picture. I have a better picture, but there's 6 hills in a row here. It's an identical site.
That's awesome. Hey, pause real quick. Okay, so we paused for a second, but basically what you're saying is that there were 7 hills here as
So
well.
so just like in this other site. So what I'm saying here is
one other question too. Was the Mickey Mouse demon found here?
No, I'll bring that one up here while we're talking about it. But
Okay.
but that's what I mean by we get lost in these ideas of that was the Vikings that did that, or that was the Phoenicians that did that, or that was the Romans that did that, because that's what the prevailing narrative is here, right? Can you see this?
Mm-hmm. You might need to change it. I don't know. Here, let me see what else you got here. I don't know why it's asking me to navigate this for you.
Yeah, what's showing on the screen right now? So I can, on my screen, I'm seeing the 6 hills.
Okay. The actual hills? No, I'm not seeing that.
No, but we're on the Wikipedia page for the 6 hills there, right?
No, I don't think so. Clear out what you have.
Oh wait. Oh, I apologize, sir. I'm new. I don't know what to do. I usually use StreamYard. I was looking at the wrong page.
Yeah. Oh, here you go.
Now we're looking at 6 hills.
Yes.
The page we're looking at before that was my point of saying that when we're looking at all these cultures again, the other one was saying, let me just do that real quick. This is saying that we're looking at a culture around Stonehenge, right? The Beaker people. This is my paternal DNA heritage allegedly goes to these people. Curious questions. What is a barrow? Again, we call them different things. That's a mound. It's the same difference. The burial mounds that predate Stonehenge by 7 centuries. So we're talking about all these cultures going over time. Why is it I look through all of my history and all I find is mounds through all these cultures, be it the Society, the Templars, the Normans, the Vikings, the Beaker peoples, or if you want to go over to this one, where today in the United Kingdom we misidentified as the Roman mounds, right? The Roman barrows. And these 6 hills are identical to 6 hills that sit in Chillicothe, Ohio, at a site called the Hopewell National Monument. So we get lost in these ideas of Hopewell, Rome, Beaker, Phoenicians, Vikings. It's the same bloodlines manifesting over time through different cultures in different time periods, doing the same activities. So if you look at the salient characteristics of their activities, the bloodlines they're in, you see the same things. Mm-hmm. We just call them different things today.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you. I mean,
that's
part of
that's literally what we're looking at here, though, right? Is those 6 hills? I can't find a good picture. I've been to the site plenty of times. I'm slacking for not having my pictures right there, but you see 3 of these hills right here in the line of 6 hills, no different than that site there. We see 3 mounds in Washington Park, Cincinnati, Ohio, in a map drawn by Daniel Drake in 1838. those mounds, by all appearances, line up with Orion's belt, no different
Mm.
than the pyramids of Giza. That
Mm.
that park, named after George Washington, is a site of they buried about 50 unknown soldiers from the Revolutionary War there. No different than Washington Square Park in Manhattan, where he was the general and presided over the army of, and initial capital for U.S. president in New York City. They built another site there with the Washington Archway there in Washington Square Park, where there's another burial ground of unknown soldiers at another mountain site. So we see again these things repeating in an ancestral homage kind of paying tribute fashion.
You said Archway too. I'm thinking about St. Louis, downtown St. Louis. They've got right there on the river. They've got that park, and it's got that massive archway. That whole area was cleared out. Oh, it was mounds, and they cleared it. The
Yep.
whole area was mounds, St. Louis. And why'd they put that gigantic archway there? What's that symbolize?
I don't know, dude, but it is interesting. Again, it's
Oh,
repeating
I could tell
patterns.
you what this is, bro. This is the Ishtar Gate.
Well, I was gonna say it seems very ancient, doesn't it?
Yeah. It goes back to Nebuchadnezzar. That archway goes back to in my mind, Nebuchadnezzar's Ishtar Gate.
Oh, wait, sir, are you telling me this is goddess worship?
Oh, I would imagine so. Yes. No, I think so. I definitely think so.
I mean, again, that's you're making my point though. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. We're looking at the same bloodlines, the same patterns of behavior, the same fundamental aspects of therein with the goddess worship. Again, we can see these things over time. We can see them being, described in improper fashions, oftentimes intentionally today. But when a discovery of Knights Templar fashions is found in the Robert E. Lee name down there, like you'd point out earlier, I mean, that's again another great example of some of the stuff we don't know about yet.
Yes. Oh, I just thought about something. I'm going to be doing some more digging on this, but I had a listener tell me about Alum Creek Reservoir in Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio, yes, sir.
It was a mound site with 7 mounds, right?
Yes, sir.
And they
I've been
flooded
there.
it.
I know. I know. Yes, sir. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was flooded in the 70s by the Army Corps of Engineers. And it's Alum Creek, right? ALUM, Alum Creek Reservoir. You froze up. Does that sound right?
ALUM, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been to the site. Wow. What about? Let me ask you this, JJ. What about Hoover Reservoir in Ohio? Do you know anything about that one?
Not off the top of my brain hole.
Okay. It's near this Alum Creek Reservoir, from what I can tell, and it seems like they did what they normally do, and they brought in they brought in a dam. Well, they brought in the Army Corps of Engineers who built the dam, and then they flooded
Typical.
ancient sites. Typical, right? So, but I was thinking about it because of those mounds, right? There were 7 mounds there. So, seems to be. You said there were 6 in one of those pictures. There were
Well,
6, but I also see these.
those were just identical mound sites in the rows of construction. But when you're talking about again, we're talking about 7 hills in
Hills.
ancient Rome stuff,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
And again,
7
you're talking
hills.
about the city of Columbus. That ain't after Christopher Columbus. That's Columbia. That's the Society of Cincinnati's goddess worship.
Goddess. Yes. I agree with
She is
that.
She is America. She's Lady Liberty.
She's Columbi is dove.
There you go. And that's why we see Christopher Columbus represented as the dove, the white dove.
And who else is the dove in ancient times? Ishtar.
There, well, sir, again, you're talking about goddess worship now.
Yes, sir. It would
So
appear so.
are you familiar with this site about 45 minutes south of
So what you have on screen right now is the demonic Mickey Mouse. Is that?
Yeah, let's talk about that first. I'll look up a site just 45 minutes south of Alum Creek that has some very interesting characteristics as we're describing here.
Let's do that then. What's the name? Are you?
You see this Mickey Mouse creature there, right? This was a Viking mound or barrow. It was
Yes.
in Denmark from the 10th century, so 900s. This was a little figure they found, and they're rich. So as we see here in America, they build all these ritual trinkets, right? So, it seemed like this was some sort of a pagan guy, demon creature there, and looks suspiciously like Mickey Mouse, sir.
Was this maybe a wand? Was it long enough to be a wand?
It
Or
could have been. It
yeah,
could have been. In fact, yeah. It seems like it could have been the
interesting.
tip of a wand. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
Magical,
I'll,
magical world of Disney, bro.
exactly right. I'll find the exact mound that came up, and you were just asking me a question. Oh no, I was going to tell you about this mound. So this mound sits about 45 minutes to an hour south of the Alum Creek Mound site you're describing.
Okay.
So it's called Cross Mound. It literally is what as described. It is a cross mound.
Hmm.
There you go.
So
From the Smithsonian sanctioned Society since they started, 1848 Squire and Davis survey, the Cross Mound. With that LaPlongeon, the Indiana Jones guy, he was
yeah.
there for that.
Well, that's an interesting shape, is it not?
Where did they
Hmm.
get that? What is the significance of this? And again, we don't know these things. We just call it the Cross Mound.
Right. Well, that's an equal arm cross.
It's an interesting shape, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I'm not trying to make everything Knights Templar,
Well, I am. So go ahead, please.
but the the equal arm cross is very
Well,
much a Templar thing.
yeah, we're in the land of but again, let's use our senses. Let's be logical. But we're in the land of the Templar. We've already discussed so many pieces of evidence of that
Yeah.
ancient to modern times. If we're going to call it anything else other than that, I think we're being silly.
And you know what? People might actually get, I don't know how this is going to come across, right? But I can imagine, I could see some people getting the impression that I'm like on Team Templar here or something like that.
You sound a lot more. Are you sure you're not Mormon?
I'm neither, sir. I'm neither Templar nor Mormon. So I'm just interested in history. That's what's on my table. That's what's on my dinner table. Just whatever history is, whatever the true history is, that's what we're going to dine on tonight, right? And I'll tell you something about this quarter cross, this equal arm cross. If you look at the points of the cross, of course, this one's a little rounded, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. And I think that there's some connections possibly with the quartered cross and the 8 points, the 8 pointed Templar cross, and the 8 pointed Star of Ishtar.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about these things, but when you see the repeating patterns of behavior like that, it seems to mean something.
Hmm. Uh, I'm not saying that the Templar cross is always used as a symbol for Ishtar. I'm just saying that the points line up. There are 8 points, and I do find that interesting. I find it compelling enough to mention. So yeah, and a lot of this
I
stuff coming
Go ahead,
from,
sir.
well, it's just going to say a lot of this stuff, coming down from Manly P. Hall, uh, is interesting to me as well. He, of course, he later in life he did become a Mason, but he was also initiated as a Templar. Manly P. Hall was.
That's right.
Hmm.
And Rosicrucian stuff too, right?
Hmm. And he's one of these guys who, every so often you see this figure emerge from the mystery schools who seems to come out of the woodwork and put a lot of information out. And it seems as if they're allowed to do so because in the minds of the orders themselves, they're pushing the culture forward. So you see these information dumps, right? Through guys like Manly P. all throughout history. I'm sure there's another way. I'm sure somebody has a different opinion on that, but
Well, no, I think Manly P. Hall's a great figure. He's this huge Masonic scholar that I found most Masons don't read his work today. And he's also this Rosicrucian guy who dabbles with Sirhan kind of activities there. And, there's been allegations from folks like Ed Sanders that he may have, in fact, been, Manly P. Hall, the Grand Chingon of the old Four Pie fame of, death cult, Manson family style stuff process.
mm,
So he's an interesting character of a cult figure for sure.
mhm, mhm. But you see what I'm saying, right? Like I think that some of these orders will put out information from time to time.
I think they put out information. I think folks like Manny Flea Hall infiltrate many orders to put out disinformation.
Interesting. Which,
Yep.
yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm
Well,
sure
let's
there's
let's
that
look at
too.
an organization like the Society of Cincinnati founded Room Society that King Charles and the royal family over there in England such venerate, and folks like Henry Kissinger and a lot of these other folks that I can all readily describe as anti-liberty communists, bastards. They're a part of it, but and again, somebody like a lot can be said about politics. I don't play in any of it, but folks like Tucker Carlson is a part of the Pilgrim Society. So Tucker Carlson, who's most firmly rooted within a lot of spooky activity with his father, who I would actually argue has done a lot of libertarian type of activities, regardless of things. Again, a lot of these groups and unintelligent agencies, they like to get involved in the same battlefield. So saying that they're all involved in one thing is not exactly the case. It's far more less black and white, more gray than that. Let's take, for example, Dick Carlson, Tucker's dad, outs the transgender campaign nationally. He's the first journalist to do that in America in 1974, outing a man who decided to be a woman professional tennis player. This is a big outrage against him for doing so, but it is that element fighting against that globalist element or anti-liberty element, and we see that primarily operating in our current times. And one of the major areas is the Pilgrim Society. And we see somebody like Tucker Carlson's part of that. Is he part of that because he's part of that group? Is he part of that as an infiltration? We see, again, the same thing going on with all these groups. The Pope is an American Pope of French Protestant origins with kinfolk in the French chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. The Templars. He's a descendant of the Templars is what I'm saying there. So we have a descendant of the Templars in the Vatican seat today. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of things that aren't as black and white as they seem. And I think there's a lot of infiltration. And you see somebody like Manly P. Hall is doing all this occultism. What is his true purpose?
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, like some of the things that you'll see is a big pile of truth with a lie embedded in it.
Lots of that, isn't there?
There's a lot of that. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Especially around the Templars, isn't it? Everyone say, oh, the Templars invented banking. Oh, the Templars were this powerful group. No one talks about the Knights of Malta, the Teutonic Knights. They didn't get put down like the Templars did. The Vatican invented banking, not the Templars, who then employed by the Vatican. So again, a lot of things are misdescribed today and done so in a misinformation fashion, like you're saying.
I've also heard that it was Arab people who invented banking. I mean,
Right?
I don't have a dog in the fight here. I'm just saying I don't. But did you see that the Vatican is putting out this mega concert with like John Legend and Pharrell and Carol G?
No, I did not see that.
It's wild, bro. I just saw
It's a weird group.
Yeah, it's like, is this the end of the world or what? Why is the Vatican putting on John Legend concerts?
Well, do you remember at the
Isn't he
height
like
of the
married?
Podesta emails, at the height of the Kevin Spacey accusations, Kevin Spacey was hiding out with his then boyfriend, Prince Andrew, along with Tony Podesta in Vatican City, numerous reports and sightings therein. So it makes you wonder again with these factional divides, what is really going on in this world? Are all these people working together? Or
Yeah,
they all want to be in the same battleground and playground, and they have factional disputes that within these groups.
man. I know, just Chrissy Teigen, right? That's John Legend's wife.
Well,
She's
dude, Kevin Spacey just was at Cannes Film Festival with his new movie, dude. And this is a dude who's got numerous accusations of
right.
very hood rat shit,
Yeah.
and all of those witnesses died,
Uh, yeah, that's
with
so
the exception of one who seems to got paid off, but the other ones met a mysterious demise.
right. It's got the JFK air to it. Like a lot of the witnesses just seem to die suddenly, especially the people who are at the hospital who witnessed JFK's body. A lot of those people, they killed like 200 people who worked in those hospitals.
Cleanup crew, dude.
Yeah,
Cleanup crew,
man.
aisle 6.
It's wild. It's wild.
So
And
that little demonic creature, I covered it. I can't find the actual dig, but it is. We can. If you want me to fast forward through my show here, I will find it for us here to close out the show. But
that's okay, bro. We can close.
folks can check it out on my Death to Disney show I did, discussing how I believe Disney's demonic creature, and I was wishing the hurricane at the time was going to take out Orlando's Disney World, not the people, just the demonic mouse.
Yeah. 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 I'm sold on this one, man. It looks just like Disney or
Dude,
whatever.
I apologize. I shouldn't.
Mickey Mouse.
Whoa. What's going on there? Whoa, my apologies. This is
Yeah.
out of control.
Yeah, man. Why don't we close this out, bro? This has been a good one.
Yeah, my computer's acting jacked up right now. Thank you, sir. I think it might be possessed by a demonic mouse itself.
How about, do you need to share anything else?
No, that was it. I was just trying to close that out there for us.
Well, no, that's I'm forever intrigued by the ancient demon Mickey Mouse. I think there's a lot more stuff like that than people realize. There, speaking of cleanup crew, there was most certainly a cleanup crew involved with the masking and hiding and burying of a lot of artifacts like that. There's a lot of stuff out there just like that that we'll never see. And speaking of the Vatican, a lot of it's below that in their labyrinth of hidden files and
You
caverns
ain't
down
kidding,
there.
sir. You ain't kidding, sir. But I would say folks everyone wants to say there's a lot of stuff hidden there. You're probably not wrong. A lot of folks want to say they're looking at the pyramids, a lot of secrets there. What's underneath there? No one asks what's underneath our feet every day here in Atlantis, America.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shit here underneath.
Yeah.
A lot of history we don't know about that is not even underneath it. It's above ground and we still don't recognize.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's another thing, man. Like, people are going to have to stop going to the government when they make a find. I'm sorry, but if you find something, do not contact the Smithsonian. I think that needs to be put out there. Like I don't know, contact your local podcaster. At least get some
Yeah.
coverage of it first.
Contact your local Muppet. You have a better chance, a better survival rate of anything going on there.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, man, this has been great.
I thank you for your time, sir. And if I can give you one quick note to emphasize the point you just make, and to bring it back to our very relevant example of that, there's a couple fellows trying to find that old Knights Templar treasure, the ones that bifurcated during the Civil War. Some went with the Union, some went with the South. When the Society of Cincinnati disbanded what we now know as the Civil War, their little feud. That Confederate gold, the southern half of that Knights Templar gold, some of it was found in a cache in Western Pennsylvania. Those fellows contacted the authorities, and the FBI not only tried to arrest them later, they stole the gold.
Mhm. Yes, I've heard about this. Those guys are still alive, right? Those treasure
Well,
hunters?
to my understanding, but they've been threatened, sued, and threatened of arrest, sued I think one of them got sued by the federal government.
Dude, yeah, what's that guy? Do you remember his name, JJ? If you don't, it's okay. But
They have a treasure hunting company, but I don't remember their names off the top of my brain hole. But that dispute started 10 years ago, sir, and I think it only finally ended 2 years ago in court,
you're
and those
right,
men
bro.
lost.
I've heard that guy on a podcast. It's been years, but I
Yeah.
heard that guy on a
Yeah.
podcast tell that story.
Yeah, you're better let calling your Muppet than the local authorities help you out.
Yeah, bro. The FBI. So I mean, that's what they
Dude,
think.
they'll arrest you, threaten you, ruin your life, and then steal your gold.
That's what they think happened with that John Swift silver mine. They think that the government found it long ago, and that the FBI has been the one, like telling people to go out and look for it.
Well, on the note of misinformation, you don't think these groups internally within these factions have been feeding each other misinformation for centuries over the locations? So when we wonder why folks like those Stonewall Jackson or that other Confederate general was raiding Union Masonic lodges that were built on mound sites, well, they may have been fed disinformation.
Yes, and I don't know. Just on a side note here, since I brought up the Swift silver mine, I don't know how much you know about that potentially or looked into that,
I'm
but
familiar with it, but
okay,
I don't know a ton about it.
it's in
Not
it's
top of my
in
brain hole.
it's interesting, man. Like, I don't have all the information just like neatly shelved and ready to go in my mind right now. So I've
Yeah,
just
no
been
worries, man. I can't even
curious.
find my demonic mound situation with Mickey Mouse. So.
Oh, you're good, man. But there are uh coded treasure maps or information. What are they? A cipher. There's a cipher involved with that, and it ties into some of the documents, the original founding father documents, like the Declaration of Independence and stuff like
Sir, I would believe you, but I saw this already in a film. It was called National Treasure. So
that. Yeah, exactly. But apparently that's the case.
I think that shit's real, dude. Again, I
Yeah.
think a lot of this stuff's
Uh,
unknown. There's folks that do know about stuff. There's disinformation and misinformation amongst those groups. So there's
yeah.
confusion everywhere. And I think a lot of stuff's not known where things are buried still to this day.
Well, yeah, and to your point, like it seems like every other thing I'm talking about these days on this show, there's people don't think it's real, and there's a movie made after it. So they think that it's all just fictional stuff. Well, what are we finding here is like the more and more I continue down my podcasting little road here, I'm finding that okay, the movies are about the real life stuff, like the
Yeah.
freaking crystal skulls,
Yep.
man.
And they
And
tell you that in a movie, so that way someone can say, "Oh, you just saw it in a movie, buddy."
yeah,
That
man.
way you can post it on Reddit. You can post all these legitimate facts about the Templars in America on Reddit, and someone will reply, "Yeah, nice try, pal. That sounds like National Treasure 3." Because that literally was the response I got.
Is that the person who said that? Is that who I think it is?
No. That guy had a different. This was just a random
Oh,
party,
okay,
but
okay.
I was trying to have legitimate conversations with the other man of ancient American history
Yeah,
lore there.
awesome, man. All right, JJ. Another good one. Tell everyone where they
Yes,
can
sir.
find
Real
you.
barn burner, if you will. Real barn burner.
Yes, sir.
Operation GCD, Sundays and Thursdays. I do some Patreon previews and then Patreon shows. The lives and times of my Operation GCD travels are on Sundays. The true crimes and I say true crimes. I think that term's ridiculous, but matters of crimes and high weirdness that have interested me over the years in my travels, I discuss on Sundays, and then been unpacking the anatomy of the Satanic Panic on Thursdays, and then 9:15, all of them at 9:15 p.m.s. But Wednesdays I do a film review, an occult and/or esoteric, and be great to have you on one of those panels here in the future. If you're a fan of any films specifically, Tim, by all means, please let me know. We'll convene on some of those matters. There's a lot of this. We could do. We could even do National Treasure, sir. Not
Mm.
number 3 like that smart on Reddit was proposing, but the first and second because there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, like an esoteric review. What? Yeah. What about?
Because again, once you put it in those films, people are like, "Oh, what is that? The DaVinci?" You have for example, that Priory Scion story I told earlier. Would you watch too many DaVinci codes, buddy? You think you got somebody from the Priory Scion stalking you? Well, here's the deal. I am again descended from 19 of those 25 Templars of the Magna Carta, and that's without consideration of maybe one or two more with George. I'm not even considering the factor of George there, right? When he's
Mm,
descended of 10, he's got 2 I don't have in my other trees. So technically, it could be 21 of those 25. And again, my son being 24. So why wouldn't I have a Priory Scion member inserting themselves in my life if these tales are true?
mm-hmm,
I'm saying
mm-hmm.
if there is evidence to substantiate these claims, well, there's evidence right there. So I'm saying these things are relevant. These things exist today. I find it they're put into films in which to discredit these things. That way, what are you Priory Scion? Would you watch Da Vinci Code? You know what I mean? So what are you Knights Templar America? Would you watch too much National Treasure, buddy? Yeah, all right.
Mhm.
Go catch some more Disney movies like that demonic demon they found in a mound.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'd love to join you for one of those, man. But there's all kinds of stuff, and like I said, man, even that whichever Indiana Jones film it was that featured Petra, uh, it
That'd be
was
number 3 with the legendary Scotsman Sean Connery, sir.
yeah. It's like somebody on his right on Lucas's writing team, or maybe even Lucas himself, was clued in to this mysterious location before the rest of the world knew about it. I just find that
Well,
interesting.
do you find it also interesting? It stars a man of Templar heritage,
Who? Which?
the legendary Scotsman Sean Connery.
Oh, is he a Templar?
Oh, he's got Templar heritage.
Heritage, yeah. Interesting, man. Yeah. Oh yeah, and one more thing, like with the esoteric review thing, did you ever do that movie? What's it called? It's got Tom Cruise and got the devil in it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, fantasy.
I think so, yeah.
Well, if you want to do that, sir, we can do that in
We'll
the
talk
future as
about it.
well.
We'll talk
We got
about
I got plenty of Wednesdays and then Fridays. We've done a couple barn burners on these topics of ancient America on my Friday show, but highly recommend folks for at least 4 nights a week. You'll find me there live over at Operation GCD.
it. Cool, man. Thanks, brother. This
Thank you,
has
sir. I
been
appreciate the conversation. You're a man with many details, Tim, and I enjoy your thoughts. And oftentimes, like I accused you of before, you're in my brain hole. You got a lot of good ideas. I like where your head's at, and
Thanks, man.
there's a lot more to discuss on these topics. I think there's a lot more to uncover because not only we've been propagandized, again, that propagandized has caused people to actually go down the actual path of the facts and use logic and reason. When we look at a cross mound, we look in the land of the and it's sitting in the land of the Templars. Let's put 2 and 2 together and call it a Templar art. Some
Yeah.
sort of connection there,
Yeah,
right? And I'm
agreed.
not saying the Templars built that. I'm saying there's some sort of bloodline connections of ancestral heritage here.
Agreed. Agreed. This is the new age of pirate radio, man. We're That's what
I
we're
like
doing
it.
here. We're taking all this information and giving it out for free. Like, do what you will with it, right? Think about it, disagree with it, think about it some more. But this is what we do. And I look forward to working with you again in the future. Guys,
Yes, sir.
if you guys want to try SHILAJIT, okay, use the promo code TIM10. That's Tim, TIM 10. If you guys want to try SHILAJIT, I take it. I love the stuff. I'm going to leave the link below to the website, and it's Vibe Med X. So just when you look in the description, just look for the word SHILAJIT and click the link and go check it out. And if you purchase some, use Tim10. And that's a wrap. As always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.